The royals just handed the McGovern clan a suicide mission under the disguise of a routine monster hunt, tossing in the Valsar family as backup. Leading that backup squad is Commander Arden. But do not let the shiny armor fool you. This dude is a sleeper agent planted to butcher the McGovern heirs. His one job, ensure those kids leave in body bags. During the clash, he plays the perfect ally, slicing through the horde to build false trust. The McGoverns completely drop their defenses. Suddenly, a goblin chief crashes the party. Arden thrusts his spear, intentionally grazing the beast rather than landing a kill shot. It is a calculated grazing meant to spook the monster, perfectly splitting the Valsar troops away from the McGovern targets. With the trap perfectly set, Arden regroups with the goblin warlord and a shady sorcerer to execute the final phase. Out of nowhere, a McGovern kid casually strolls from the shadows of a massive oak, smirking and asking if he crashed their little villain huddle. Arden freezes his brain, short-circuiting over how a literal child tracked their absolute top-secret location. This kid drops absolute bombshells. He casually name-drops Arden's classified alias Wooden Cloud, exposes the goblin warlord, and completely dismantles their entire assassination plot. The second, his hand grazes his hilt, the sorcerer's arms are absolutely vaporized in a blinding flash of steel. Arden is violently sweating, questioning what kind of demon he is actually dealing with. He lunges to intercept, but the kid vanishes into a blur, instantly bisecting the massive goblin chief like butter. Desperate, the commander goes for a blindside strike, but the boy reads him like an open book, ghosting past the blade effortlessly, before Arden even exhales. Cold steel severs his limb entirely. The shock delays the pain, and by the time reality crashes into his brain, the commander collapses to his knees, bleeding out. Here's the wildest part. This kid hails from a savage bloodline, entirely cursed without mana. Yet he somehow shattered his genetic limits to become an absolute force of nature. Meet Carol. To grasp this insane power leap, we need to hit rewind. Long before flexing on assassins, he was not just a kid. He was the literal savior who single-handedly dragged humanity out of an apocalyptic nightmare. His grand prize for saving the planet, a brutal betrayal from his ride-or-die framed for assassinating the Emperor, and ruthlessly slaughtered by his own brothers-in-arms. Bleeding out with infinite regrets, our fallen legend jolts awake years prior, way before the catastrophic war even triggered. There is a massive catch though. His god-tier Sword Saint stats are completely wiped. He is now shoved into the frail body of Kirill, a barbarian orphan just scooped up by Quell McGovern. Talk about peak awkwardness. Considering Quell is the exact same commander who butchered Carol's bloodline in his previous run. However, our main character needs major political armor to gear up for the upcoming apocalypse. Getting introduced to his snobby new siblings, he quickly learns that society treats barbarians like absolute dirt due to their hollowed-out mana circuits. Wielding spells is biologically impossible for them, so when he carelessly drops at the dinner table that he plans to master sorcery and completely gap the entire family, they look at him like he is clinically insane. Offended, the eldest heir, Martha, drags him into the sparring arena to brutally humble the cocky orphan. Martha is an undisputed prodigy, flexing a crackling mana blade and elite pedigree. Cute. Our guy literally crawled through hell in a past life death tower. Watching Marth swing is like watching a toddler wave a twig. Carol completely downloads his opponent's emotional tantrum, weaves right through a massive overhead chop, and plants a devastating hook directly into the golden boy's jawline. The whole courtyard absolutely flatlines. Zero trash talk follows. He just offers a hand and instantly locks in the eldest brother's absolute loyalty. Flexing on a teen is cool and all, but right hooks do not cancel out Doomsday. Carol is actually after a legendary artifact buried deep within the estate. Blown away by the kid's raw guts, Count Quell tosses him the keys into the heavily guarded Einherry archives. Little do they know, the original architect of those dusty shelves was history's absolute first dragon slayer, who rigged an unsolvable security measure. The phantom door reveals itself strictly to a vessel, utterly completely void of mana. That means our medically magicless protagonist is genuinely the singular human alive who can crack it. Slipping into the phantom vault, he secures the jackpot. A condensed dragon core. The millisecond he dry swallows the relic, catastrophic regret hits. His internal organs literally start shredding themselves into confetti. The agony gets so severe, his consciousness is violently hurled into a psychic realm. He is brutally forced to spectate the final moments of the ancient dragon Lysiria, warring against the sorcerer who violently harvested that exact core. Carol absorbs the beast's lethal trauma, his muscles spontaneously combusting, as they permanently fuse with draconic energy. 7 agonizing days later, his eyes snap open. Pinned to his mattress, he immediately senses a massive shift in his biology. Staring at his palms, he casually ignites a blinding azure inferno, officially breaking his genetic curse and conquering mana. Yet right before he can hype himself up, paralyzing agony slams him onto the floorboards. He aggressively, forcefully ripped open 2 mana circuits, but a brutal 10 remaining gates are still heavily sealed. Grinding through the pain, Carol spends the next several days secretly maxing out his new spellcasting stats. Out of nowhere, the elites on the throne mandate the McGovern clan to launch a sudden creature extermination raid. Wrapping it up as a quote-unquote favor, they attach backup forces from the Valsar Syndicate. Notice the red flag. The Valsars are their ultimate political enemies. Carol's trauma flares up instantly. In his previous timeline, this specific expedition was a masterfully crafted slaughterhouse that ended with his older brother Marth bleeding out in the dirt. Rolling up to the rally point, they link with the Valsar mercenaries spearheaded by the lethal commander Arden. Carol already has him fully downloaded. Arden is an undercover operative, deployed specifically to guarantee the McGovern heirs vanish forever. Staring him down, Carol predicts the true puppeteer pulling these strings is chilling way beyond Imperial borders. Martha caught our guy totally zoned in and asked what was cooking in his head. Khalil just brushed it off, acting like it was no big deal. He was rocking a mask to keep his roots dead hidden. Honestly, nobody needed to know he had barbarian blood pumping through his veins. Khalil honestly didn't care about the disguise. If anything, playing the mystery man gave him massive peace of mind. Once Arden rallied his troops, he barked the order to move out. Right then, the eldest son slipped our boy a quick heads up. He told him to keep a hawk's eye on that knight captain. Honestly, bro was preaching to the choir. Khalil was already planning to shadow his every move. Saddled up, the cavalry started pushing heavy toward the borderline. Khalil started scanning the terrain like a hawk. The path was closing in, squeezing tighter by the second. Flashing back to his past life, he knew the trap snapped shut in a choke point just like this. The ambush was literally breathing down their necks. Khalil gripped his blade locked in and ready to crash out. Suddenly, someone screamed from the front line monster spotted. Over 100 goblins were swarming their way. Arden ordered the squad to brace for impact, but Khalil kept his gaze deadlocked on the captain. No details were slipping past him today. The timeline was shifting. Up ahead, the horde crashed into their ranks like absolute psychos, slamming straight into the shield wall. Arden vaulted right into the swarm, spinning his spear to start a total bloodbath. Bro literally turned into a human meat grinder. He shredded through the horde like wet paper, flexing some insane combat stats. Hyping up his squad, he roared at them to stop freezing up. Hold the line and push back. The phalanx cracked open just enough to let the polearm strike, skewering any freak that pushed its luck. The sloppy goblin wave was melting fast. Khalil jumped into the chaos, swinging his sword and deleting targets left and right, trampling them under his horse's hooves. But then it hit him. The numbers were way off. This tiny mob could never pull off a massacre, like the one that got his brother clipped in his previous life. There was zero chance this weak squad caused that tragedy. It just wasn't adding up. Plus, the foot soldiers were holding the line like absolute veterans. The danger level plummeted almost instantly. The so-called deadly trap was already getting clapped. But right on cue, the real nightmare decided to drop in. A massive shockwave ripped through the back of the formation. A colossal beast with nightmare fuel fangs stepped onto the field. It was casually dragging a club the size of a whole freaking redwood tree. Its roar shattered the air, instantly melting the morale of the toughest knights. Against a tank like that, their shields were basically glass. A cold sweat dripped down Khalil's neck. That was the Goblin Warchief. Even flying solo, that boss-level threat was severely broken. But the worst part, this raid boss usually rolled up with an army of thousands backing him. Tyrone read the room and immediately ordered a tactical retreat. Now, Khalil just had to wait and see what Arden's next play was. Despite a literal raid boss standing there, the captain kept barking orders with zero panic in his voice. Khalil was holding back a laugh at the Oscar-worthy acting. He knew Arden was a rat, and this sudden ambush was heavily scripted. Our main character was just waiting to see when the mask would slip. He tracked Arden's every swing as he cleared out the remaining fodder. Dismounting his horse, the captain yelled for his crew to carve out a path, warning them to play it smart. He told anyone with a spine to fall in line behind him. A second later, the tip of his spear ignited with intense magical energy. Arden was charging up a heavy-hitting buff, straight up paralyzing the nearby goblins with fear. He squared up, ready to drop a massive nuke. His crosshairs were locked onto the warchief. He launched the glowing spear like a missile, but the strike did absolutely nothing. The beast swatted it away like a fly. Still, Arden's reflexes were insane. He snatched the weapon right out of midair, lining up a clean opening for a fatal finishing move. But right before he thrust the blade, his wrist twitched. A tiny, sneaky adjustment. Khalil, who was literally hyper-fixated on the guy, caught the glitch. The blade sunk into the monster's flesh. But because our guy was watching in slow-mo, the truth clicked. Arden was definitely cooking up a betrayal. He threw the shot on purpose. Leaking blood, the goblin boss entered rage mode. It instantly targeted the man who just tried to put it in the dirt. The squad started panicking over their captain's safety, but Arden barely deflected the smash. Still, after surviving by a thread, the warchief decided to bounce. Pulling back to grab the high ground seemed like the smarter play. Arden immediately screamed for a full-on pursuit, demanding his troops hunt down every last one of the retreating freaks. Bingo. The whole puzzle just snapped together in Khalil's mind. This was exactly why his past life timeline got completely blindsided. Arden's men would be baited into a wild goose chase, leaving the McGovern base totally defenseless against a flank. Absolute cinematic villainy. But the only flaw in this masterpiece of a trap, Khalil already knew exactly how to break the script. Tyrone yelled at Khalil to dispatch troops to back up the captain, insisting they had to secure the perimeter. Flipping the script on his adoptive brother Khalil, straight up refuses to hunt some random mob creatures, zeroing in on his actual prey, instead Arden. Because that guy is the ultimate target, while the clueless knights gallop off to chase the decoy beasts. Arden pulls back on the reins. Glancing over his shoulder, he figures he has officially ditched the squad completely. Playing the hero card, he commands his troops to sweep up the trash mobs while he supposedly hunts the big boss alone. The foot soldiers immediately start sweating over this reckless move. Everyone knows a goblin chieftain never rolls solo. There is always a dark sorcerer pulling the strings nearby. Letting those two deadly threats survive the afternoon is a massive red flag. Arden instantly catches an attitude. He snaps back, asking if they seriously doubt his solo carry potential, sending the terrified guards scrambling to apologize for questioning him. Spurring his mount forward, the knight coldly claims their presence would just drag down his kill count. With nobody watching his back, he smirks, betting the McGovern forces are getting absolutely swarmed by now. Reaching a dead end, he brings his horse to a halt. His eyes scan the eerie surroundings to double-check the meetup coordinates. Right in the shadows bleeds the goblin boss, looking incredibly rough. Arden announces the coast is clear, demanding his hidden contact step out. Out of thin air, a twisted sorcerer materializes casually, claiming he has been chilling there the whole time waiting for this rendezvous. Annoyed by the McGovern army's flawless defense, Arden points straight at the battered goblin and orders the magic user to execute it. The caster nods, ready to clean up their messy operation, but a completely random voice suddenly echoes through the woods and ruins the vibe. Stepping into the moonlight, our main character finally crashes the party, sarcastically asking if this is the VIP lounge. He sighs heavily, acting like he busted his chops for zero payoff. He desperately needs some intel. Dropping heavy insider lore to sound legit, he name-drops the route and flexes the wooden cloud codename. Arden practically drops his jaw, wondering how a random kid unlocked classified data. Leveling his spear right at Khalil's chest, he interrogates the boy about his guild ties. But to our MC, the knight's cluelessness is painfully obvious. Spinning a masterclass lie, Khalil claims his security clearance was revoked, so he just showed up to lend a hand anyway. Throwing in a fake grudge against the McGovern bloodline, he begs the wooden cloud to loop him in. Arden narrows his eyes, his paranoia totally spiking. But the kid just casually dropped his top-secret alias, meaning he has to be an inside man. Playing into the delusion, Khalil mentions the route must have burned massive stacks of cash to deploy a goblin warlord like this. Fishing for details, the boy assumes the ambush casters are locked and loaded nearby. He admits breaking the guild's oath of silence is a massive taboo. But he swears this chaotic situation requires bending the rules. Honestly, Khalil is out here flexing maximum charisma, showing his speech skill is leveled up to 99. Talk no jutsu has nothing on this kid's absolute poetic fiction. He claims he is running a shadow op on his own. Smoothly dropping a metaphor, he says, the branches obey orders, so the trunk can feed intelligence straight back to the root. That flawlessly delivered lore drop completely sells it. Arden lowers his guard, confirming the Beast Battalion is primed to jump. He brags that hitting the launch button is basically a guaranteed win, all thanks to the root's hand-picked mage. Exposing the entire strategy, the knight points to the sorcerer as the absolute brain behind the monster remote control. Khalil tilts his head, confirming this specific guy is the main problem. Muttering about how easy this just got, the boy tightens his grip on his blade and strides forward instantly, triggering Arden's fight-or-flight response. In a literal blink, the sorcerer's hands are sliced, clean off his wrists. Shaking off the blood, Khalil coldly states he is entirely done playing games with annoying NPCs. Watching his ace in the hole get dismantled, Arden loses his mind, screaming at the kid to explain himself. Dropping the act completely, our boy smirks, revealing his whole yapping session was just stalling to isolate them for the slaughter. Shaking in his boots, the clueless knight starts sweating bullets. Khalil locks eyes with him, realizing this guy is the perfect high-level training dummy. Because until this exact moment, he has never had a chance to spam his raw magic without witnesses catching him. Across the dirt, his enemy Panic charges his blade with aura. Arden is mentally scrambling to figure out the kid's elemental build, completely flying blind into this matchup. Zero intel on the boy's identity, and absolutely no clue about his origin story. And honestly, he is never going to get those answers. Exploding from a dead standstill, Khalil violently bypasses the heavy armored knight in a fraction of a second. Unloading a shockwave of an attack, he instantly forces Arden to realize this kid is built entirely different. Gliding with insane acrobatic finesse, our MC treats gravity like a joke, making the veteran warrior absolutely dread trying to track that god-tier speed. Khalil ghost steps right up to the battered goblin chief. The monster's survival instincts scream in terror, but it is way too late to dodge. In one seamless arc, the beast is brutally bisected. The slash was literally faster than the creature's nervous system could process. Lowering his weapon, Khalil admires the gorgeous carnage he just created. But the one truly dying inside, that is Arden. Watching a boss-tier threat get instantly deleted makes a horrific reality click. The actual raid boss here is this tiny masked kid. Flooding his spear with desperate mana, the knight launches a do-or-die thrust directly at our overpowered protagonist. Arden actually thought he caught the kid slipping, but his spear just sliced straight through thin air. Khalil didn't just dodge, he completely closed the gap. In a split second, sheer panic washed over Arden's face as he realized he was totally cooked. That heavy strike did absolutely zero damage. And right on cue, our regressor protagonist launches a furious counterattack, tearing through the darkness like an absolute flash of lightning. The price for missing: 1 whole arm. It took a solid minute for Arden's brain to process that he was going to be left-handed from now on. Blinding agony forces the knight straight to his knees. Meanwhile, Khalil stands over him, coldly calculating his next move. He knows he isn't even close to his peak yet. Mastering the flow of mana is going to be his top priority. With the enemy completely pinned down, our boy casually steps up to host a little impromptu Q&A session. He gives the knight a friendly warning to start talking if he wants to keep breathing. First question on the board: what exactly is the deal with the root? Sweating bullets but trying to act tough, Arden runs his fingers along his blade and asks if Khalil would ever snitch in his shoes. Khalil just smirks, admits he absolutely wouldn't, and immediately delivers another brutal slash to the traitor. Switching up his interrogation tactics, he fires off question number 2. What was the actual endgame after finishing this hit? Trembling with pure terror, Arden grits his teeth and refuses to drop a single word. Our MC just shrugs it off. He tells the guy he doesn't even need the intel anymore. He just needs a gruesome warning sign for the rest of them. And with one clean swing, his sword completely separates the knight's head from his shoulders. Not missing a beat, he locks eyes with the sorcerer, hoping this magic user has a much higher pain tolerance. Watching his bodyguard get instantly folded, the mage looks like his soul just left his body. Panicking for his life, he screams at his monster horde to swarm the kid already. But tough luck for him, these beasts might be wild, but they aren't totally brain dead. They instantly scatter into the woods. The mage starts yelling empty threats, but his voice catches in his throat as Khalil teleports right behind him, whispering that he is only going to ask this once. Cut to a bit later and Khalil is riding back to the base camp, dragging the tied-up sorcerer along for the ride. Tyrone, who was pacing around, sweating the details, finally spots his little brother approaching. Spotting the kid carrying a severed head and a random prisoner, he demands a full debrief. He also asks if they managed to pack up the goblin chief. Playing the innocent victim, Khalil claims they got jumped, feeding him a fake story about how poor Arden was brutally shredded by the monsters. But the moment Tyrone recognizes the bloody face, his jaw drops. He knows there is no way that cover story checks out. Seizing the spotlight, Khalil slams the captive mage face first into the dirt, doubling down on the ambush narrative. He drops a bombshell. The entire trap was secretly set up to assassinate the heir of the McGovern family. Tyrone's mind is completely blown. Never letting off the gas, Khalil points the finger straight at the sorcerer for puppeteering the beast attack. Having already interrogated the trash out of him, he reveals this guy is secretly a rat for the Duchy of Lorraine. With their summoner out of the picture, the monster horde is essentially running around like headless chickens. The crew has to make a move. If they just walk away, those creatures are going to massacre the neighboring villages. Tyrone nods, fully agreeing with the logic. Khalil then locks a dead-eyed stare on the surviving Valsar deputy, the guy who was second in charge. Since Arden just got heavily retired from breathing, the kid gives the deputy an instant battlefield promotion. The old veteran is visibly stunned. Khalil leaves the door open for him to retreat with zero judgment, pointing out that losing their captain early is a valid excuse to dip. But the veteran knows perfectly well that returning empty-handed means the Baron will end his whole career. So he swears his troops to our protagonist. Hearing the exact answer he wanted, Khalil jumps back in the saddle, praising the old guy for saving him a headache. He then tosses the reins of leadership over to Tyrone, stressing that they need to blitz these creatures right now to keep the body count at a minimum. But Tyrone instantly steps down. He looks at Khalil and straight up admits his little brother is the real boss of this operation. Getting that ultimate sign of respect from his older brother hypes our MC up. He draws his weapon and orders the entire squad to fall in line. His internal clock is ticking. He knows the oracle drops in exactly 3 years. He has to speedrun his way to the top of the food chain. If he slacks off, his entire master plan crumbles. He needs to secure his ticket to the imperial capital, especially since the timeline is already shifting. Right now, the enemy ranks are a total mess. It is literally the perfect farming spot for a massive group wipeout. Spearheading the massive assault, Khalil commands the army to crush everything in their path. Tyrone just watches from the back, absolutely frozen in awe. He literally cannot comprehend how a kid with zero mana control is dropping bodies like an absolute raid boss. Standing nearby, Martha finally admits they totally miscalculated the boy's true potential. Watching this rookie flex his power, you gotta wonder what kind of absolute menace he will turn into as an adult. The label monster will not even scratch the surface. Meanwhile, Khalil is already soaking up the hype back at the main estate, popping off with the squad. Baldy hypes up the young master, crowning him as the absolute MVP of the day for snatching up a literal enemy spy. He spells it out for everyone. If the kid had not crashed the party, the heir and his brothers would have been totally wiped off the map. Word travels fast though, and the Emperor already has the tea. Next stop for the captive, straight to the royal dungeon. The million-dollar question is whether Khalil gets an invite to the capital, but the Count is sweating bullets, knowing the real final boss there is not the Emperor himself. It is those bloodthirsty princes throwing down for the crown. They would put Khalil under a microscope, desperately trying to poach him for their own factions. He is either a broken cheat code or a massive threat, and if the king summons the kid, the Count is benched and cannot tag along to protect him. Khalil already did the math. Stepping into the palace right now would be a massive headache, especially since he is still marked as an outsider. But honestly, the board is still set in his favor. As he strolls past the barracks, every single guard stops to drop some serious respect. Our boy, however, is always plotting 3 steps ahead. He shadows his way down to the cell to pay their captive spy a little visit. Staring cold holes into the man, he orders him to get on his feet and listen up. The deal is simple: spill every single secret rattling around in his brain. Do that and he catches a break. Minutes later, the prisoner cracks, crying on his knees and begging our protagonist for a shred of mercy. Khalil drops a brutal reality check. He is headed to the royal torturers no matter what, and those guys do not play nice. That missing chunk of his arm, total child's play, compared to the hell awaiting him. We are talking months of non-stop agony, rotting in pure torment before they finally let him flatline. Pulling out a lethal vial, Khalil casually reveals his twisted version of kindness. He is handing the sorcerer a one-way ticket to punch out of this life early. Fast forward to the village, and the streets are absolutely roaring for the Count's sons. The locals are treating them like total rock stars. Tyrone nudges our main character, telling him to walk with his chest out. He is officially holding that Duke's son status now. Plus, he literally hard-carried the entire raid. Marth insists Khalil should be leading the pack, but our cold-blooded hero could not care less about the spotlight. He scans his brothers, clocking how drastically their vibe shifted. Snatching the eldest heir from the jaws of death definitely flipped the script. Now Khalil is running simulations on how this butterfly effect will alter his timeline. Tyrone interrupts, warning Marth to brace himself for a potential royal summons. He tells his brother to wipe that panic off his face because stepping into the Grand Palace is looking like a locked-in reality. Except the ultimate carry of this mission was Khalil, a total foreigner. Guilt creeping in, Marth figures if his overpowered brother stays behind, he should bunker down in the territory too, since he basically coasted through the fight. Looking at our protagonist, Marth is genuinely mind-blown by the kid's absolute ice-cold aura. Taking notes, the older brother mentally commits to his own training arc, determined to shatter his pathetic limits. The second his boots hit the floorboards at home, Khalil zeroes in on the Count's study. His dad beams, tossing out massive props for a mission well done. Playing the humble card, Khalil chalks it up to sheer luck. But the Count shuts that down. Luck is a stat, and the kid just bagged a high-value target while shielding his brothers. The hype around his flex has already leaked straight to the royal court. It is only a matter of time before elites come knocking. McGovern is stressing hard over keeping the kid's origin story buried, so he pitches the idea of sending just Tyrone and Marth to the capital. Shrugging it off, Khalil claims he is totally fine dodging the spotlight. Watching his adopted son act so mature drops a massive weight off the Count's shoulders. Feeling generous, the boss hands him a blank check, name any reward, and it is his. Instantly, a light bulb flicks on in our hero's head. He shoots his shot, requesting full clearance to travel solo. Blinking in shock, the Count questions if he seriously wants to dip out of their safe zone, which is exactly the vibe Khalil is going for. Panic flashes across McGovern's face instantly, assuming he failed as a father and the kid hates his new home. Shutting down that sad theory, the boy promises it is nothing personal. He just craves a taste of the massive world out there. Honestly, he has to insert himself right into the core of this continent's upcoming chaos, which means hitting the road. Soaking in the kid's fierce determination, the Count caves. He slides a heavy metallic emblem across the desk. This VIP token is exclusively flashed by top-tier agents moving under the family's banner. It acts like a master key, unlocking every single border patrol across the empire, without ever leaking his true identity to the authorities. Swallowing his pride, the Count apologizes for making his greatest asset operate in the shadows. Suddenly, a frantic knock derails their wholesome moment. A messenger bursts into the room, dropping a massive bombshell. Things just went sideways down in the cells with their high-value captive. Baldy steps up, sweating, confessing that the dark sorcerer somehow pulled the plug on his own life. McGovern's jaw practically hits the floor. Meanwhile, our savage protagonist throws on an Oscar-worthy fake gasp. The guard details how they found a highly toxic plant right beside the corpse. Bowing deeply, the head guard swears he patted the prisoner down constantly and begs for forgiveness. Respecting the veteran's flawless track record, the Count orders him to drop the guilt trip. Still, this is a massive steaming mess dropped right on their laps. Why? Because the royal family's extraction team is literally en route as they speak. Throwing gasoline on the fire, the guard sighs, lamenting how this totally wrecks the young master's very first legendary carry. Fortunately, the Count already swept the kid's involvement under the rug anyway. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, the Count reasoned. Either way, they're catching intense heat for botching the prisoner's security. The real bummer, his kid gets absolute zero credit for doing the heavy lifting. Still flying under the radar, successfully dodges a massive headache down the line. Gazing out the window, Khalil easily connected the dots. The first Prince Leon was totally going to weaponize this chaos and strike. That guy was an absolute snake. His ultimate game plan, pin the whole disaster straight onto Count McGovern, completely ignoring the fact that the Count was one of the continent's 5 legendary swordmasters, a literal walking icon. Flipping through his past memories, Khalil clocked that his dad's upcoming war campaign would drag on for nearly a year, creating the perfect shield against the prince's political crossfire. While the old man was deployed, our guy had to grind. It was prime time to smoke out the remaining rats lurking in the shadows, stacking enough hard receipts to absolutely crush any incoming accusations. Honestly, his days hanging around this estate were seriously numbered. Before dipping, he hit up the library for one last loot run. He was low-key hoping to score another epic relic, but came up totally empty-handed. Guess the Dragon Heart was the only legendary drop in the stash. Regardless, Khalil owed everything to that ancient mage for handing him a massive respawn, granting him the exact firepower needed to flip this world upside down. Suddenly, the blade resting on his hip flared up with a blinding pulse. Caught completely off guard, Khalil watched the glowing mana illuminate a tiny crumpled slip of paper, snatching it up quickly. He tried to figure out what just resonated with his aura. Turns out it was a hidden memo, stashed deep inside the original Dragon Heart box. The text was straight up chilling. "You who crave this, turn back if you fear the Reaper." Khalil's eyes widened. This isn't just paper, it's a literal access key. The second he finished reading, his magical energy spiked again, turning the parchment to absolute ash in his palm. No doubt about it now, his raw aura definitely triggered this, flooding the entire room with a heavy pressure. The hype was getting incredibly real. This basically confirmed a hidden vault of high-tier loot was lurking nearby. Out of nowhere, the stray energy condensed, projecting glowing, floating text right in the air. A direct message meant specifically for whoever consumed the heart. This enchantment was completely locked to his DNA. The projection practically smirked, mocking him for crawling back out of pure greed, which ironically was exactly the kind of vibe the old mage respected. Khalil couldn't believe he was getting thrown into another crazy trial. A phantom voice echoed out, declaring that a dragon's essence is nothing but pure, unadulterated violence. A savage force unmatched by anyone alive, something even the legendary wizard himself couldn't completely tame. Now it was entirely on our protagonist to unlock its true potential, channeling that devastating energy instinctively through his most trusted weapon. Acknowledging Khalil's path of the blade, the spectral voice dropped a heavy warning to master this. He'd be dragged straight out of his comfort zone and pushed to his absolute breaking point. Taking the hint, our guy sparked up a massive surge of raw mana between his fingertips. The old man was clearly pushing him to evolve beyond just swinging steel. But wait, there was a massive bonus drop for his bottomless greed. Out of thin air, a hidden chest materialized, overflowing with insane wealth. Buried right under a mountain of gold coins sat a totally unique ancient bracelet. The old wizard was tossing him one final carry. Khalil reached into the pile to snag it, but the second his fingers got close, the metal artifact lunged forward like a striking viper, clamping aggressively around his wrist. The ghostly voice chimed in again, introducing the item as the Bracelet of Greed, a cursed accessory designed to devour mana. If a basic non-player character equipped this, it'd be an instant game over, but for Khalil, it was a literal lifesaver. Without this heavy-duty limiter, that chaotic dragon energy would have ripped him apart from the inside out, flatlining him in under 30 days. Our boy was entirely clueless about how close he was to an early grave. The Phantom bragged about being the sole human to ever crack the 8th tier of magic, yet conceded that Khalil was the one walking away with the ultimate prize. Snagging something completely off-limits wasn't enough, though. The ancient spellcaster demanded that the kid push past the ceiling and leave his own legacy in the dust. Step 1 was already in the bag. He somehow survived the lethal heart transplant. Now came the real grind, feeding that core with endless ambition, until he hit a tier so terrifyingly high nobody could even touch his shadow. The mandate was brutally simple: go wild. Absolutely nothing on Earth could tank his new stats. He was fully off the leash now, with zero obligations to bow to anyone. That dominant mindset was exactly what the mage demanded from his successor, taking it all in. A wicked smirk crept across Khalil's face. He paused, seriously questioning if wasting his time building some boring political empire was even worth the effort anymore. Trying to meticulously rewrite the future, please. Backed by literal dragon specs, he could just steamroll through the timeline instead. The master plan finally clicked into place. His new objective was brilliantly toxic force the entire empire to put some massive respect on his name, shattering the outdated divide, separating the privileged citizens from the outcast foreigners, flexing a completely fresh, edgy hair transformation. Khalil swore on his life to flip the script on this corrupted world. And when the inevitable rematch with Alvin went down, there'd be absolutely zero flinching. Just a cold, dead stare straight into his rival's soul. Strutting out of the library with his insane new drip, he threw a mental salute to the dead wizard. The days of being someone's pawn were officially cancelled. This was the moment his real chaotic playthrough in the imperial capital finally launched. Cut back to the long-haired prince who was sitting there thoroughly fascinated, pressing Prime Minister Brian for his read on the situation. The veteran politician played it cool, claiming it was way too early to call the shots, especially with so many massive blind spots in the intel. And with their main spy permanently logged out, digging up the truth just became an absolute nightmare. He advised dropping the hammer on any guards who completely fumbled their shifts. Prince Leon absorbed every word, gears violently turning in his head. He honestly never saw it coming, the luring faction actually having the guts to pull such an incredibly aggressive stunt right in the middle of McGovern turf. Brian couldn't wrap his head around the audacity convinced these outsiders viewed the Empire as absolute trash. But the first prince clapped back, pointing out that having a massive target on your back invites this kind of chaos. Right now, the entire continent probably sees their empire as a total joke. They couldn't just stop at Lurin. They had to dig up dirt on every shady noble family, and even put neighboring monarchs under the microscope. Sweeping the board, the prince decided to dump the entire investigation into the Prime Minister's lap. His current obsession, confirming if the absolute legend who took down the enemy spy was actually just a kid. Brian dropped the stats. The boy was Count McGovern's adopted son, clocking in at a mere 12 years old. That detail blew the prince's mind, forcing him to admit the Count possessed an insane radar for snatching up top-tier talent. Total bummer, the guy wasn't playing for his team. But the Prime Minister saw an opening talent or not, a kid's mind is practically wet clay. Yanking him into their own inner circle would be a total cakewalk, a vibe the prince entirely agreed with. After all, the apple often rolls light years away from the tree. Just look at their own twisted family tree. But then Brian threw a massive curveball. The prodigy who bagged the spy. He straight up ghosted the Count's territory. This intel instantly spiked the prince's blood pressure, demanding to know why an exclusive royal invite hadn't already been shipped out. And just as his temper hit the boiling point, the heavy doors swung open, his private session hijacked by the second prince crashing the room just to drop a casual greeting. The older brother scoffed internally. Their toxic dynamic definitely didn't justify this fake friendly act. Unbothered, the younger sibling announced he'd be ditching the palace for a massive chunk of time. The firstborn smirked, recognizing his brother's wanderlust. Even so, he shot back a veiled threat. The palace is running smoothly, and he'd personally guarantee it stays locked down that way. That icy warning definitely landed. But the second prince hadn't come unarmed. He leaned in, casually name-dropping the infamous slave king, digging through his mental archives. The prince pictured the absolute menace, who orchestrated a massive prison break for slaves and barbarians exactly 12 months prior. Without missing a beat, the younger sibling revealed this legendary outlaw had just been thrown behind bars. That bombshell actually managed to rattle the older brother's icy composure. Apparently, Viscount Haroun bagged the guy on pure dumb luck. Narrowing his eyes, the long-haired royal demanded to know why his brother barged in, just to spill some random street gossip. Pausing at the door, the younger prince threw a knowing glance over his shoulder. He delivered the intel because it held massive weight, a fact both of them silently understood. Paranoia flared in the firstborn's chest. Was his little brother secretly trying to recruit the slave king for his own faction? If that was the master plan, it just blew up in his face. The suffocating tension finally broke as the doors clicked shut, proving the little brother was no longer a pushover. Cut to a massive sweeping prairie, where Khalil is tearing through the wind on horseback. Pushing his limits, he finally pulled the reins to catch his breath. Downing some water to fight off the brutal dehydration, he scanned the horizon. He was practically scraping the edges of the territory, a smirk crossing his face, as he wondered if the bigwigs had noticed his vanishing act yet. Betting that absolutely zero people cared, he was missing in action. Turning back wasn't an option. The mission was crystal clear: hunt down hard evidence on the Lurin spies, then unlock the secrets of advanced magic. His old library only fed him absolute beginner spells, which was entirely useless now. Sure, his core stash was running empty, but that overpowered bracelet let him channel mana like an absolute boss. Now he desperately needed a training ground. to grind his skills to the absolute peak. The ivory tower was a prime spot, but they were massive lapdogs for the royals. Then there was the Council of Immortals, hardcore research nerds who gate-kept their knowledge. Since both factions only buffed their loyal followers, Khalil was essentially locked out. That left exactly one wild card on the table, hitting up his ancient ride-or-die ally, the Dragon Mog. One massive problem though, the scaly beast was hibernating miles away in a heavily fortified den. And with his current stats, Khalil would get absolutely folded by the perimeter guards. The kid knew the brutal truth: he had to grind some serious experience points and build his street credibility first. And his current destination was the ultimate sandbox for that, the one spot on the entire map bowing to Zero Kings, the completely lawless free city of Tatur. Fast forward and our guy rolls up to Piasta, a buzzing harbor town. The energy here was absolutely electric, packed with street vendors, hawking crazy loot from every corner of the globe. Taking in the vibrant chaos, Khalil felt a massive wave of relief that he'd previously crushed the monster wave, aiming for this place. While dodging the massive crowds, his ears caught some prime gossip. A merchant just inked a massive deal to feed a local night squad. Not just any squad, the Order of Rio. That name literally stopped our protagonist dead in his tracks. These heavy hitters were the ultimate shield, guarding the Empire's eastern borders. With the Lurin spy operation exposed, it made total sense they were gearing up for war. Playing Switzerland was his main goal, especially since these armored tanks backed Oliver's faction, but snooping on their movements felt like a necessary side quest. However, dragging himself into high-level politics right now was a death wish, so ghosting the situation was the smartest play. Sticking to the main quest line, he finally tracked down the Merchants' Union headquarters. To hit Tatur, he had to navigate the Fenian River, a massive waterway slicing straight through the landmass. We're talking nightmare-tier currents packed with vicious aquatic beasts, a route demanding a top-tier captain just to survive. Stepping into the bustling lobby, he laid out his request. He needed a hardcore guild capable of ferrying him across those deadly waters to Tatur. Funding the trip wasn't an issue since he totally rated Elliot's secret stash collateral damage for the impending war. But the receptionist delivered a massive reality check, apologizing because absolutely zero guilds were crazy enough to run that suicide route. That devastating update left Khalil completely stunned and internally raging. He name-dropped the Revolt Guild like they were absolute legends, but the receptionist just hit him with a blank stare. Never heard of them. The locals in the hall warned him that crossing that river was basically a death wish. If you want to hit the free city, you gotta survive a port completely run by criminals, a turf owned entirely by the Golden Lion. Khalil is low-key spiraling, entirely clueless about how the timeline messed up. Staring down the receptionist, he pushed harder, dropping the leader's name, Suan Hazer. But she totally doubled down, swearing on her life. Those names meant literally nothing to her. Hitting the streets, the kid's brain is working in overdrive. He clearly remembers crossing paths with that dude at age 15, meaning the clock hasn't run out just yet. Pushing through the alleyways, he stumbles right into absolute chaos. A massive mob is completely losing their minds, raging at some guy accused of teaming up with the barbarians. They are ready to execute him on the spot. And catching a glimpse of the battered prisoner in the center of it all, our boy freezes. His jaw practically drops because the dude getting dragged is none other than Swan Hazer. The math is definitely not mathing here. Flashback to the royals chatting. The princes were hyping up this legendary rogue called the Slave King, the exact same guy currently in chains. Yeah, Suan owns that badass title. Now our main character is desperately trying to figure out how a boss like him ended up taking such a massive L. Some authoritative dude shoves through the mob, barking at everyone to back off. He's yelling that the prisoner is straight up scum who pulled an unforgivable betrayal and doesn't even deserve their eye contact. Carol instantly clocks the guy it is, Viscount Haroon. But what is this noble doing way out here? His turf is miles away from Piasta. This guy is supposed to be locking down the borders, backing up powerhouses like the Valsar and McGovern clans. The energy here screams personal vendetta. As Haroon glares at the captive, the crowd keeps spitting venom, calling Suan a savage sympathizer and absolute trash. But here is the crazy part. This battered prisoner is literally the exact VIP Carol needs to find. Seeing him wrecked like this was definitely not on the bingo card. Carol snaps into focus, tracing his memories back to when Oliverne hooked them up to mastermind a brutal ambush on Luring. Suan was an absolute beast back then, impossible to forget. The timeline is totally bugging him out. How does this bruised-up captive glow up into an absolute powerhouse in just 3 short years? His brain is spinning, trying to connect the dots, but the mission remains the same. Suan is his absolute only ticket into the free city. There is zero chance Carol lets this legend die in the dirt. Our boy locks in. He is breaking him out. Time to get tactical. He sneaks over to Baron Ragi's massive estate, which is currently packed with heavy security. Scanning the perimeter, Carol can tell these guards are hardcore veterans, but if he plays this stealth mission flawlessly, he stays alive. See, Ragi started at the absolute bottom, clawed his way up to nobility, and hoarded an insane amount of cash. But betting on the first prince, that was his ultimate game over. The Baron was paranoid out of his mind, practically building a labyrinth of panic rooms and secret exits. Spotting a hidden door, blending perfectly into the stone. Carol smirks. The layout matches his past life memories flawlessly. Back then, Oliver had sent him digging through this exact spot to expose dirty money and tax fraud receipts. Who knew that ancient side quest would be the ultimate cheat code today? The tunnel smells absolutely toxic, running straight into the city's grossest sewers. But pushing through the grime, he tracks down a rusty vent, leading right into the black site dungeon. If he was still rocking his adult physique, he would instantly get stuck in that tiny gap. But being pint-sized right now is a massive W. Down below, the dark hallways are swarming with fully armored heavy hitters, while the infamous Slave King sits locked up, wrists tightly bound. He is drowning in regret, obsessing over the lavish, noble life he completely fumbled. To pull this stunt off, while he is deep in his feels, a guard aggressively snaps at him to shut his mouth, slamming a weapon against the iron bars. The guard finally steps out, leaving him to rot in the shadows. Honestly, Suan is just low-key relieved. His bones are still intact. Slipping a hidden hairpin between his fingers, he decides it is breakout time. But the vibe shifts. A faint echo kills his momentum. 3 pairs of boots hitting the stone. He clocks the heavy clank of a knight and the shuffle of a guard. But that third set of footsteps, a total mystery. The heavy metal door swings open, revealing the second prince himself. The guard instantly barks at Suan to get on his feet for royal VIP time. Chilling inside the dusty vent, our boy realizes a major confrontation is going down. Olivern flexes his royal aura, admitting he has been dying to meet the legend. And peering through the grate, Carol is absolutely hyped. His ultimate target, the legendary captive, is literally chilling right below him. But seeing the second prince pulling up and dropping the Slave King title, that completely breaks Carol's brain. What is this royal plotting? Suan plays it dangerously cool, acting totally clueless about the badass nickname. But Olivern smirks, spelling it out. The savage tribes worship him as the absolute hero who smuggled countless slaves past the empire's borders. The prince drops a massive theory. Suan funneled everyone to the free city of Tater literally seconds before the king authorized a bloody witch hunt. Suan keeps his mouth firmly shut. The puzzle pieces finally snap together in Carol's mind. This explains exactly why the elusive king vanished into thin air. Right after the heretic purge wrapped up, Olivern had secretly teamed up with him back then. Sensing the tension peaking, the prince cuts the small talk, laying out his high-stakes proposition. Suan hits back with weaponized sarcasm, asking how a raggedy nobody is supposed to do favors for imperial blood. The guard draws his blade to slice the disrespect right off his neck, but Olivern casually waves him down. Catching the sheer authority in the kid's eyes, Suan leans in. He asks if he is dealing with the first or second born, noting that the streets claim the third son is completely brain-dead. Dropping the formalities, the royal finally introduces himself as Oliver, the second prince. He claims he came all this way just to beg for a favor, spinning some sob story about wanting to rescue the barbarian tribes. He pitches this whole "we are all one" narrative, acting heartbroken that the northern folks are getting wiped out. He swears he'll do absolutely whatever it takes to help them, practically begging our guy to jump on board with his master plan. Listening from the shadows, Khalil is straight up boiling. He knows this savior routine is pure cap. It's the exact same performance that tricked him back in his past life. For a second, it totally looks like Suan is falling for the bait until he cracks a smirk and shatters the illusion. He straight up tells His Highness to quit yapping. Prince or not, he's asking for a literal miracle. The royal bodyguard instantly loses his mind, popping a blood vessel and reaching for his blade to decapitate the prisoner on the spot. But Oliver shuts him down. Khalil peeks at the raging boomer and is totally stunned to recognize Count Redak. This dude is the legendary commander of the royal knights who trained the 3 princes. Even pushing 70, he is an absolute beast with a sword. As one of the continent's top 5 strongest warriors post-Oracle, having this geezer aggro on them would be a massive headache. Oliver plays the victim, asking why he's getting zero trust. Suan claps back, testing if the royal even knows the actual price tag on a single barbarian's life. 5 gold coins a pop. That is literally enough cash to keep a capital city resident living comfortably for 5 straight months. You either pay the river toll, or you don't cross. Oliver immediately flexes his bottomless wallet, promising unlimited funds. But Suan hits him with reality, asking if he has any clue how brutal the free city actually is. 4 of those gold pieces go straight into the pockets of the Golden Lion. That tyrant rules the territory, leaving the refugees with just 1 measly coin to scrape by, assuming they don't get packed up on day 1. And even with the money, the environment itself is a literal death trap, just waiting to claim their lives. Throwing cash at this won't fix anything. Suan has watched way too many people get deleted out there. Dumping refugees in that meat grinder is a reality an elite like the prince could never grasp. Honestly, Suan confesses he hasn't actually saved a single soul. The system is too rigged. Telling the royal to kick rocks, he suddenly shifts his hair, exposing a glowing crimson iris. Khalil's jaw practically hits the floor. In his previous life, that eye was strictly off-limits. This proves the guy is a rare survivor of the Red Eye clan, the same clan the Empire mercilessly wiped off the map ages ago. Suddenly, his massive grudge against the crown makes perfect sense. Popping off, the prisoner declares that living like this, or getting executed, is the exact same vibe. But if Loverboy genuinely wants to play the holy savior, he needs to hand over the free city entirely. It is the only safe zone left. Khalil is honestly shook seeing this dude rage so hard, because the future version of him was always ice-cold and calculated. Oliver just brushes off the hostility, claiming his new pet project just needs time to cool off. He refuses to drop the issue, hyping up the prisoner's potential. Sliding out of the dungeon, he vows they will be chatting again real soon. The heavy iron door slams shut and everything clicks for our boy. Suan originally joined forces with the royal family, swallowing his immense hatred for the Empire purely because Oliver eventually banned the brutal heretic hunts. But here is the massive plot twist. Khalil knows absolute power will completely corrupt the future emperor, and he refuses to let history repeat itself. Meanwhile, Suan is left sitting in the dark. A sudden thud makes him snap to attention. Khalil has already knocked the guards out cold. He swings the cell door wide open casually, asking if the guy can slip those cuffs off because draft day is here and it is time to move. Totally thrown off, Suan demands to know who this random teenager is. Our MC just flexes a handful of gold, stating he is here to draft him into his squad. He acknowledges the insane river toll, but after eavesdropping on that intense therapy session, he realizes paying up is totally pointless, vowing to starve the golden lion of every single penny. Suan internally groans, figuring he's cursed. First an entitled prince, now a literal psycho kid. Khalil drops a bombshell, promising to literally hand the city of Tatar over to him. That wild claim leaves him speechless, but right now they desperately need to break out. Suan is calling absolute cap on that promise. The entire Imperial army couldn't conquer that territory, so an edgy teen doing it sounds completely absurd. He seriously starts wondering if the dungeon guards beat the sanity out of his brain, and he is just hallucinating. Halting in his tracks, Khalil swears zero regrets, and tells his new buddy to watch closely. The MC plans to storm Tatar, grind out his street cred, and transform it into an ultimate sanctuary for the wandering tribes. Suan has zero clue what this kid's actual endgame is, but he refuses to squad up with an Imperial citizen. Khalil totally validates that feeling, knowing someone carrying that cursed trait would naturally despise the crown, especially since the government is actively deleting barbarians, stacking up a massive body count during the ongoing inquisitions. Sure, Oliver will eventually scrap that toxic law once he snags the crown, but by then, the tribes will be basically extinct. Khalil still hasn't figured out the prince's true shady motives, but right here, right now, our MC has the power to carry out a massive rescue mission, and he desperately needs Swan's brains to pull it off, officially asking for an alliance. The captive shakes his head, admitting the royal was completely delusional. But this unhinged teenager takes the crown for sheer madness. He smirks, challenging our protagonist to prove he actually has the stats to break them out of this hellhole. If that was the whole challenge, dude was seriously underwhelmed. But playtime ended real quick when the backup guards finally sniffed them out. Suan is absolutely sweating bullets. Khalil, though, he's smirking like a menace, knowing he's about to snatch one of Oliver's ultimate trump cards right under his nose. Channeling raw, arcane energy into his blade, our boy slammed a devastating shockwave straight into the earth, blasting up a massive smokescreen of crushed stone. With the prison wall absolutely pulverized, their escape window swung wide open. Without missing a beat, the duo sprinted straight for the tree line. Barely a few minutes into the mad dash, Suan was already gasping for air, totally gassed out. He couldn't wrap his head around it. This kid just nuked a noble's estate without batting an eye. Absolute unhinged behavior. Right then, Khalil dropped the illusion, cloaking his actual features. As his real hair and eye colors flared to life, the escaped convict finally clicked the pieces together. Khalil was a barbarian cut from the exact same cloth, but Suan instantly called cap. There was zero chance a savage bloodline could wield magic. Spells and mana were strictly off-limits for their kind, branding them as ultimate heretics meant to be slaughtered on sight. Brushing off the accusation, Khalil hit him with a million-dollar question. Did he want to flip this broken world upside down? Because to pull it off, his specific skills were mandatory. Honestly, the pitch was working, dragging Suan right into the hype. But first they had to survive crossing a violently raging river. The waterway was practically a minefield of massive whirlpools, yet our main character was locked in, totally hyper-focused on reaching the opposite shore. Despite the insane death trap waiting for them, Khalil just marveled at the sheer brute force of the rapids. Meanwhile, Suan was totally creeped out by how chill this kid was acting. Any normal person would be having a massive panic attack right now. Plus, staring at his high-end drip, it was wild to even process him as a barbarian. The dude gave off major aristocratic vibes, and let's not forget the casual spellcasting he just flexed. Snapping back to reality, Suan warned that the navigation was about to get intensely brutal, telling the kid to keep his head on a swivel. One slip into those roaring waves meant instant game over, no respawns, no rescues. Khalil just brushed it off, telling the stressed-out captain to keep his foot on the gas. That cocky attitude definitely grated on Suan's nerves, though he quickly admitted that orchestrating a massive jailbreak already proved the boy was built completely different. Forget acting 10 years old. He radiated the intense aura of a battle-scarred warlord. Cutting his thoughts short, Suan prepped to launch a grappling hook. He lobbed the heavy iron straight at a jagged boulder, hooking it perfectly. The next move was anchoring the tail end dead center on the hull. Instantly, the whole boat started violently pitching side to side. But incredibly, that insane maneuver was the exact cheat code needed to ride the rapids. Watching Suan muscle through the chaos with pure, unadulterated physical grit, zero magic involved, left Khalil genuinely shook. The guy was an absolute prodigy at the helm. Spotting the captain sweating buckets to keep them afloat, our boy decided this was the perfect time to spam him with questions, randomly grilling him about the brutal oppression barbarians faced across the mainland. Suan snapped back that it was a total clown question, considering their people were literally scraping by just to breathe. With the Inquisitors constantly on their necks, they didn't even have the luxury of being treated like livestock anymore. Honestly, the kid just had to look at Suan's pathetic state to get the memo. The guy was only a half-blood, yet he was still treated like absolute prey. Having even a single drop of that savage DNA instantly stripped you of all basic human rights in the Empire. Leaning fully into his fake innocent kid persona, Khalil relentlessly kept poking the bear. Pointing straight at the captain's wrist, he demanded the lore behind that cryptic ink. Playing it off as no big deal, Suan muttered it was a piece of his mother's tribal legacy, a permanent reminder of her highly illegal romance with an imperial citizen. Staring right through him, Khalil pointed out the massive chip on the captain's shoulder, a deep-seated grudge fueled by his tragic family tree. Cutting the therapy session short, Suan screamed at the kid to brace for impact. Things were about to get incredibly spicy as a massive cluster of death spirals boxed them in. Surviving the absolute blender, the captain slashed a tension line in half. Against all odds, they had actually conquered the most lethal checkpoint of the journey. Khalil was silently handing out respect points for that insane clutch. But just as the adrenaline faded, Suan locked eyes with a massive, ominous silhouette gliding under the waves. His blood ran cold. He knew exactly what was lurking down there. An absolutely colossal aquatic beast breached the surface, closing in on their tiny wooden hull. A literal sea king, pure, unfiltered dread paralyzed Suan, fully aware that a normal human was completely useless against a boss-level threat like this. Khalil just sighed, telling the captain to take a chill pill. He casually dropped the fact that real sea kings are the size of mountains, while this thing was just an overgrown river snake, basically a baby version. Still, the beast lunged for a lethal chomp, violently ripping a huge chunk out of their ship's side. Flooding his blade with raw crackling mana, our boy decided playtime was officially over. It was time to carry the team. Launching himself straight into the danger zone, he effortlessly sidestepped its furious snap. Capitalizing on the wide-open blind spot, he plunged his steel deep into the monster's skull. Pumping ridiculous amounts of magical energy into the point of impact, he ripped the blade sideways in a devastating finishing cleave. The captain just stood there, jaw on the floor, witnessing this insane display of dominance. That kind of explosive output was strictly reserved for high-ranking Imperial Knights, but for our totally overpowered lead, it was barely a warm-up, instantly one-shotting the aquatic nightmare. With the threat deleted, he instantly flipped the switch back to annoying tween mode, demanding the shell-shocked captain to keep the boat moving. Their final destination was Tater, a massive man-made island floating in the mist. After all that chaos, they had finally made landfall. Known to the underworld as the Free City, it served as the absolute last safe zone for any barbarian trying to dodge the Inquisitor hit squads. The real MVP holding this entire underground network together was Captain Swan, acting as the sole navigator crazy enough to survive that cursed river route. But checking the perimeter, he bluntly stated there wasn't a single spot left to park their wrecked ride. Sure, this lawless port is an absolute nightmare, but he figures they're straight since he's got major connections in the underground. Even so, dragging a kid into this mess, major red flag. Khalil replays the conversation he had with the prince, immediately calling cap on the whole story. Suan is completely clueless right now. Khalil does the math. There is literally zero chance these broke refugees are casually carrying around 5 gold coins. Yet the population here is absolutely exploding. The math ain't mathing, which means Suan has been secretly footing the bill, paying off the local boss, the Golden Lion. Our boy knows the captain is about to become the dead center of a massive turf war with these absolute savages. So he lays it out straight. Forget about the Golden Lion for now. Just focus on smuggling more refugees onto the island. The second his boots hit the docks, a squad of armed goons rolls up on him. But our guy doesn't even flinch, swearing he'll keep his word to Suan and serve him this entire city on a silver platter. The captain is absolutely stunned. Before he can even process it, the kid who dragged him to this death trap starts throwing hands with the entire crew. These thugs really thought they had an easy dub, right until the kid completely wipes the floor with them. Khalil literally leaves a trail of broken bodies in his wake. Bleeding out on the pavement, they demand to know who this monster is. The kid just presses his blade against a survivor's throat, demanding a VIP tour to the Golden Lion. Comply, or it's game over. Meanwhile, deep inside the Golden Lion's penthouse, a dude is sobbing his eyes out, begging for his life. Spoiler alert, crying doesn't work. In a flash, he gets transfigured into a literal statue, his frozen corpse slamming hard against the floor. Just another piece of morbid living room decor joining the horrifying gallery of victims that came before him. According to this psycho boss real name Kuran, he gave them a totally fair shot. A simple coin toss for their survival. His own henchmen are terrified of his sick obsession. They are literally playing janitor every single day, scraping fresh corpses out of the office. Kuran invents a brand new, unhinged excuse to execute someone daily. Yet, in his twisted mind, he's basically a saint offering a second chance. A chance for people who were already doomed. But right in the middle of his little ego trip, the heavy double doors get blasted open. Furious at the disrespect, he snaps at his lackeys to find out who crashed his party. They scramble in total panic. Kuran's eyes narrow as he catches a sudden spike in magical energy. But his psycho priorities kick in, barking at his maids to leave his shiny new corpse statues exactly where they are. Back at the bloody docks, the battered thug points a shaky finger toward the tallest skyscraper in the skyline. He promises to guide our main character straight to the boss if he just lets him walk away. Khalil smirks, thanking the poor guy for the free intel. But catching that dead, icy glare in Khalil's eyes, the thug instantly goes back to begging. Suwan actually steps between them, pleading for the guy's life. He tries pulling the refugee card. Honestly, our MC could not care less. If this dude was actually a decent human being, he would not have sold his soul to a street gang. Suwan is literally shaking at how ruthless Khalil sounds. Because to Khalil, clocking in to work for a monster instantly makes you a monster, end of story. He turns to the captain, forcing a massive reality check. It is the ultimate moral test, let the traitor live or put him down. Suwan, freezing up, gives our MC the exact green light he needs. One swift strike and the thug's free trial of life expires. Real freedom in this underworld is not something you can just ask nicely for. The guy who just got a one-way ticket to the afterlife chose his own terrible fate. Khalil tells Suwan to drop the heavy guilt trip. Deep down, the captain is still eaten alive by the fact that he dragged innocent people into this meat grinder. The only way out, burn this island system to the ground and rebuild it. While they talk, a pair of eyes tracks our boy from the pitch-black alleyway. The vibe is instantly menacing. The shadow finally steps into the moonlight, practically collapsing as he begs for backup. The dude is bruised, bloody, and looking rough. But when Khalil spins around, his jaw drops, he knows exactly who this is. It is freaking Aiden Hamill. Playing the victim, the guy claims he barely outran some local bandits. Khalil just tries to hide a huge wicked grin, realizing that Oliver's master plan is cooking up something absolutely insane. Time for a lore drop. Building the Oliveran Empire took 7 legendary pillars. You had Bran, the ultimate big brain tactician, Surga, a mage with god-tier magic, then Meister, a merchant who basically owned the continent's economy. Next was the battlefield demon Zakin, a guy with zero chill. Suwan was actually on that elite roster too, standing right alongside our MC, and pulling the strings in the shadows was Aiden, the ultimate networker, who traded secrets like crypto. Khalil starts piecing the timeline together, figuring out exactly when this spy slipped onto the island. That is why Oliver totally ghosted Suwan earlier. He was already plotting to hijack this entire port city, by any means necessary. Squinting at the bloody guy, Suwan speaks up, admitting he smuggled this dude and his sister across the border. Now that is a plot twist our MC did not see coming. Aiden quickly covers spinning a tragic tale about losing his sibling in the chaos, claiming he is desperate to track her down before it is too late. Khalil immediately smells the cap. He knows exactly who that sister is, Zuka, a total powerhouse built like a brick wall with insane physical stats, and a ridiculously lethal assassin. If she is loose on the island, the Golden Lion is basically already dead. Meanwhile, Aiden is internally screaming, trying to figure out who this blonde kid is, because his whole mission was to trigger a massive gang war between Suwan and the local mob boss. Suddenly, a gritty voice echoes from the alley, screaming that they found the runaway. Seeing the extra company, the heavily armed hit squad decides to just bag everyone in sight. The Golden Lion's kill team has officially entered the chat. Fleeing wasn't even on Khalil's radar, so he leaped dead center into the enemy squad, unleashing absolute masterclass swordplay. He was about to school them. Blink and you missed it. The brawl ended before anyone even swung. Now that Aiden realizes, this kid is an absolute prodigy, with a blade bro is legit shook. He already had the intel about Suwan's daughter getting saved by some random kid. He just never clocked that the boy would be this insanely overpowered. Our main character calmly asked if the guy wanted a reunion with his sister. He pitched an offer to assist, but honestly, Khalil was totally over the dude's cheap acting, instantly spotting exactly where the guy stashed his concealed weapons. Knowing the guy was itching to launch a sneak attack any second, Khalil bet everything that Aiden had the coordinates on the Golden Lion. Aiden spilled that the boss was hoarding the tallest tower in the zone, rolling deep with roughly 50 goons. Calling bluff, Khalil instantly calculated there were at least double those numbers waiting. Meanwhile, Suan started panicking, totally clueless on how to siege the enemy base. But for our hero, the math is ridiculously simple. He wanted to full send a frontal assault connecting the dots that Oliver totally weaponized these guys' skills to conquer the island before, but this run was going to be a completely different game. Pivoting to Aiden, Khalil demanded backup, telling him to quit dodging the hard questions. Since our boy already held all the cards, he just needed to hijack Aiden's magic for a hot second. Khalil is locked in and ready to snatch the entire city. Cut to the Golden Lion and his mob frantically hunting down the source of a massive racket. Suddenly, one of the grunts screams that they are heavily screwed. An inferno was blazing everywhere, surging straight from the docks, targeting the ships directly. The second he processed the destruction, the Golden Lion lost his absolute mind. The blaze had already mutated into an unstoppable wildfire. Right before the boss even caught on, our MC had sparked a tiny flame, slinging his fiery magic straight into the heavy explosives. Give it a few minutes and the whole block would be pure anarchy. Cue Aiden stepping up to flex his own technique. Getting super focused, Aiden channeled massive wind currents directly into the blaze. That lethal elemental combo supercharged the inferno. Thanks to Khalil's initial sparks, practically everything in sight was getting torched. Just a single vessel managed to survive the fiery wrath untouched. Plus, all that thick ash totally blinded the enemy mob, completely masking our squad's raid. The stage was perfectly set for Khalil to pop off. He ordered Swan to lock down the surviving ship so it wouldn't float away from the docks, while Aiden kept spamming his windstorms. Khalil swore he would solo the rest of the mess. Marching straight onto the island turf, his two allies lingering in the back. Definitely aren't buying into the kid's hype just yet. Cut back to the Golden Lion, who is practically foaming at the mouth after losing half his armada. The mob knows they gotta extinguish the blaze as soon as possible, but the heavy smog is totally blinding them. Before anyone could even grab a bucket, a phantom shadow started dropping bodies left and right. The Golden Lion instantly clocked that a predator was lurking inside the fog, but his elite crew just kept hitting the floor one by one. Sweating bullets, the Bandit King desperately hunted for the ghost, only to earn himself a nasty slash, tearing right across his shoulder bone. And honestly, Khalil was barely even warming up. Finally, the Golden Lion locked eyes with his attacker. Our boy fully knows this crime boss is a savage monster who's racked up a massive body count, which is honestly hilarious considering our MC is a total Grim Reaper himself. Despite eating that clean strike, the boss thinks the teenager is just flexing for nothing, and shocker, his shoulder flesh stitched itself back together in a flash. Khalil already sensed his slice was way too shallow. His current physical vessel is seriously lacking raw horsepower, and while he'd love to bust out his aura, he's still gotta keep his true power level completely under the radar. Scanning the kid's flawless blade stance, the bandit leader realizes he isn't dealing with some rookie, prompting him to unlock his full arsenal. He's about to make the boy pay in blood. Tracking the enemy's stance, Khalil instantly identified the legendary water sword style. The move literally sucks ambient moisture into a massive shredding vortex. While those two clashed, Suan successfully secured the getaway ride, while Aiden stood there totally fascinated by this teenager. The way bro just swan dived straight into the raging inferno with zero hesitation was wild. Nearby, Swan gave massive props to Aiden for carrying with his wind spells, but Aiden confessed it was mentally draining his palms, literally quivering from the strain. Deep down, Aiden knows their entire roadmap just got totally derailed. The original mission was to force Suan into the meat grinder. He figured that down the line. The Slave King was bound to break out of his cell, but this random kid totally scrambled the script. Looking way more like a grade schooler than a teen, this kid is out here wiping the floor with hardcore assassins. His blade mechanics are completely busted, plus he's casually dropping tier 2 magic. His potential scaling once he hits adulthood is terrifying. Aiden instantly calculates that turning this absolute menace into an ally would be a massive cheat code. He made the call to spectate the kid's raw stats firsthand. Back in the danger zone, Khalil is deadlocked in absolute combat focus. He's weaving through the boss's lethal hydro vortexes, while the Golden Lion starts sweating his heavy weapon, literally getting overpowered by a teenager's raw grip. It's basically a dead heat right now, which is driving the bandit warlord completely insane. Analyzing the incoming strike, Khalil realized he was basically taking a high-pressure tsunami straight to the face, pure crushing kinetic energy, yet the MC smoothly sidesteps every drop, breathing constantly down the boss's neck. The villain notices this psycho kid is exclusively headhunting for a decapitation, and that freaky weapon he's gripping isn't normal either. Every single time the blade parries the aquatic strikes, it literally deletes the magic on contact. Attempting a cheap mind game, the boss barked that Khalil was about to get packed up. The dude was ready to cross any line. He practically swore he'd chunk up the kid's remains into bite-sized fish food, barking out cheap threats hoping something would stick. But Khalil just yawned, saying all that yapping made him look like a total fraud, definitely not boss material. Having his own Golden Lion playbook flipped on him, yeah, that completely shattered the guy's ego, twisting his face into pure demonic rage. Then Khalil dropped the nuke, casually naming him as Kiran Majid. The bandit literally short-circuited. Nobody alive knew his actual family name. Our boy laid out all the receipts. He knew this guy was the true-born heir to a fiercely loyal Navy admiral who got framed for treason, a tragedy that ended with his mom getting slaughtered by his own dad, spawning a lifetime of pure, unfiltered misery. And the puppet master behind all that suffering, the newly crowned emperor, that power grab completely obliterated Lopez Majid's decorated career. But airing out the Golden Lion's deepest family trauma, that was basically throwing gasoline on a wildfire. The bandit snapped, summoning an absolutely massive swirling vortex of heavy water, dead set on wiping the kid off the map, no matter the blowback. This ultimate attack was locked on a relentless homing missile designed to hunt the kid down until his heart stopped beating. But our main character, he didn't even flinch. He just stood there, chilling effortlessly, sidestepping the initial tsunami strikes. The lion roared that it was game over, gripping his blade to deliver the final execution. He genuinely believed his heavy stance swordplay, backed by his entire body weight, would instantly crush some random brat. The deadly currents were closing in dangerously fast. That's when Khalil finally went on the offensive. He flawlessly deflected the supposedly unblockable strike, and it got worse for the boss. Inch by inch, the bandit lost his grip, completely neutralized by an absolute masterclass in defense. This left a massive opening for Khalil to deliver a brutally clean, bone-shattering counterslash straight across the lion's chest. Look back when Khalil was grinding in that nightmarish tower, he butchered thousands of mutant freaks. We're talking beasts with impenetrable armor plates, shape-shifting liquid monsters, and airborne demons. Some of those horrors couldn't even be scratched by raw physical damage. Surviving that literal hellscape forced him to evolve, pushing Khalil past the absolute ceiling of traditional swordplay. He unlocked something mythological, the 5 steps of the blade. These aren't just stances, they're overpowered reality-bending moves. The higher the step, the more devastating the impact, and he had just dropped step number 1. Judging by the bandit's agonizing grimace, that strike hit totally different. Stripped of his weapon and bleeding out, the guy looked entirely hollowed out. A chilling realization hit him. If Khalil had just an inch more reach, his skull would be rolling on the floor right now. The terrifying truth finally clicked. This wasn't some helpless kid. Staring into those icy dead eyes, the lion knew he was practically holding a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Running purely on adrenaline and a bruised ego, he screamed that he refused to get packed up by a toddler, losing his grip on reality as he spawned a completely ridiculous, chaotic tidal wave, throwing pure, reckless energy at the boy. But Khalil easily spotted the glitch in his matrix. Blind fury always kills your combat IQ, turning perfectly good swordplay into sloppy trash. So our guy blitzes forward with insane swagger. The Golden Lion panicked suddenly, realizing the kid had shifted into an entirely different gear of speed. It took a fraction of a second for another brutal slash to connect. The blinding agony forced the boss to fumble his backup blade. But Khalil was just warming up. He kept systematically dismantling the guy, deliberately drawing out the beatdown just for the vibes. He chained his combo into a devastating roundhouse that launched the bandit straight through the air. Our boy didn't even break a sweat, looking completely unbothered, while that rib-cracking impact left the lion, literally coughing up blood. Gasping for air, the boss finally acknowledged the kid's god-tier stats, daring him to just land the final blow and end it. But he warned him if the local crime lord mysteriously vanished from the docks, the entire island's underworld would put a massive bounty on his head. Watching from the shadows, Aiden knew that wasn't a bluff. Even with maxed out stats, no single player can survive an entire island's aggro, especially since this port is basically just the tutorial zone for Tato, a metropolis of pure concentrated danger. But our protagonist just smirked, pointing out a massive flaw in the guy's logic. He didn't come here to pick random street fights, he came to conquer the whole damn city. And honestly, he was absolutely exhausted from listening to this dude yap. Zero patience left in the tank. Khalil casually hoisted his blade, fully prepared to forcefully separate the Golden Lion's skull from his spine. Crouched in his VIP hiding spot, Aiden was internally screaming. His carefully crafted master plan had just gone completely up in flames. The clock was ticking before the top-tier syndicates realized what went down, practically nuking all of Aiden's hard work. He had severely underestimated exactly how cracked this kid actually was. And as if his anxiety wasn't peaking already, Khalil randomly yelled out his name, demanding to know why he was creeping around. Fumbling for an excuse, Aiden spun some lie about searching for his sister, secretly panicking over how this kid's radar was so insanely accurate. He claimed he checked everywhere, but came up empty. Khalil obviously knew the girl was actively spectating from the sidelines, but deciding to play along with the charade. He suggested they team up to scour the city. Aiden's stomach dropped. A creeping paranoia told him he was being perfectly manipulated. Like this kid was reading his mind like an open book. Let's remember, there are 4 apex crime lords running this island. And once word leaks out about this massacre, all hell is going to break loose. Anticipating this, Khalil forcefully snapped the Golden Lion's weapon in half, retrieving the coveted boss's token stashed right inside the hilt. It left Khalil seriously questioning what his own blade was actually forged from. I mean, it didn't even chip after completely obliterating a high-tier specialized weapon, like ripping through wet tissue paper. Suwon questioned if this kid was gearing up to claim the boss title, but our main guy's right-hand man completely shut that theory down. Reality check. He is going on a full-blown hunting spree. Flexing that defeated boss's token is purely a power move to keep low-level scrubs from wasting his time. Plus, it unlocks some serious VIP perks. But his actual endgame lies deep within the neon grid. A single token barely scratches the surface of what he needs. Cut to a doughy, out-of-shape mobster snoring away, flanked by a squad of absolute baddies. Enter Khalil, completely crashing this guy's midday snooze fest. Khalil straight up asks if he is Kama, the big shot boss. The flabby kingpin jolts awake, sweating bullets, screaming to know who let this random kid inside. While the models scatter out the door like terrified mice, the spherical boss starts shrieking for his heavy hitter, Carve. But our boy coldly drops the bomb. Carve is taking a permanent dirt nap outside right alongside his entire crew. Khalil already clocked that this boss is absolutely loaded. And right now he is getting totally extorted by a teenager. Flashing the golden token, Khalil officially crowns himself the new apex predator of the lawless port. The bald guy's soul practically leaves his body when he recognizes the golden lion emblem. The math is not hard. It only means one terrifying thing. The former boss got completely flatlined. Khalil casually mentions the brawl was a fair one-on-one, pointing to his companion as the living proof. Kama locks eyes with Suwon Hazer. With that legendary name backing the story, the bald dude instantly caves, bowing down to the kid's absolute authority. 0 alarms tripped. 0 radio chatter. He instantly pieces together that his entire port security got wiped clean off the map. Having a solid survival instinct, he switches to extreme customer service mode, begging to know what Khalil wants. Our boy demands the deep lore regarding the underground black market. Since this doughboy is the literal master key to the shadows, it is time for him to clock in. But the bald guy stammers that the timing is way off. Booting up the market strictly requires a dual key launch from 2 official bosses. Khalil just smirks, tossing up his freshly looted token. Plus, he is literally staring down another boss right now. If Kama wants to keep breathing, he better start opening those doors immediately. Khalil's true mission, securing a god-tier artifact stashed in the shadows. Something the mainstream world does not even know exists yet. This floating dystopia flexes 3 massive advantages the mainland lacks. Untraceable loot, absolute anarchy, and top-tier intel. Literally, any forbidden item can be swapped under the radar here. That is precisely why on day 1 of the new calendar, mainland elites sneak over to drop massive bags at this underground auction. And that corrupt cash flow is exactly how this island remains an untouched haven. Properly intimidated, the sweating kingpin finally pulls the trigger to launch the market. His terrified assistant nervously asks if the other bosses greenlit this move. Trembling like a leaf in a hurricane, Kama whispers he will deal with the fallout later. He fiercely warns his assistant to treat this terrifying kid like absolute royalty. He almost blurted out a question about the kid's identity, but quickly swallowed his words, knowing that kind of curiosity usually ends with a toe tag. Sweating through his suit, the dude with sky-high cholesterol barked the order to unlock the gates, and suddenly, his subordinate became the most cooperative guy on the planet. Trembling at the sheer terror of cartel retaliation, he practically begged the kid to understand he was just a pawn in this game. See, this underground bazaar stays locked down most of the year, so booting up operations after a mere 3-month hiatus was completely off the script. A schedule break like this, unheard of. Khalil paused his gears, turning demanding to know exactly why this shadowy syndicate was rushing their timeline. Hands raised in surrender, the manager swore blind ignorance, throwing the previous boss under the bus. Khalil instantly clocked it. This had Duchala's fingerprints all over it. The former kingpin of this whole operation wasn't just some suit. She was a lethal shadow-forged assassin. If she caught wind that someone forced her gates open, heads would absolutely roll. Interrupting the tension, the lackey laid down the ground rules. Enter a stall and you are bound by blood to buy something. You get exactly 60 minutes on the clock. But our boy smirked, telling him to chill out. He wouldn't even need a fraction of that time. Stepping inside, rows of lethal hardware gleamed under the dim lights. It had been a minute since he walked these sketchy aisles, and the whole vibe felt insanely surreal. Cash is king here, flash enough of it and you can buy the world. But Khalil was locked onto a singular target. That ticking clock, pure background noise. He kicked open a very specific door, stepping into a dusty parlor where a grumpy shopkeeper waited. Khalil immediately reached for a relic, but the old guy snapped at him to back off, warning that the busted artifact was off limits. Scowling in disbelief at having an actual customer, the geezer tried to shoo him away, claiming this dump was nothing but a graveyard for ancient, useless trash. Khalil fired back with a grin, stating that unknown hidden relics were exactly his vibe. Instantly, the shopkeeper's eyes lit up with suspicion and curiosity. Here's the massive plot twist. Khalil knew damn well this dude wasn't just some wrinkly human, but Khalip, a mythical gnome hiding in plain sight. Realizing his cover was totally blown by a random human teenager, sheer panic washed over the gnome's face. To keep the guy from having a full-blown meltdown, Khalil dropped his illusion, flashing his true hair color to prove he wasn't just some basic mortal. But plot twist, that visual actually made the merchant utterly terrified. Why? Because barbarians are practically hardwired against wielding magic. Khalil then dropped some heavy lore, mentioning his dragon buddy spilled the tea about gnomes, bribing scaly beasts with shiny loot, and that they are absolute legends at forging enchanted gear. Oh, and that whole rumor about them going extinct. Total cap. He knew exactly who was playing delivery boy for his dragon pal. Khalil straight up demanded the legendary package meant for the platinum dragon. Rattled to his core, the gnome stammered, begging to know how this kid possessed top-tier classified intel. Throwing his hands up, our guy told him to take a breather. He wasn't there to throw hands. He just knew that whatever Mog ordered had to be straight fire. Hearing someone disrespect his savior with such a casual, flippant tone deeply triggered the gnome, who practically worshipped the ground that Dragon walked on. Undeterred, Khalil demanded to inspect the loot casually, dropping the fact that the massive beast was currently dead to the world in a deep slumber. He also completely exposed the gnome's hustle, revealing he knew these tributes were just a way to honor ancient oaths that still had a 3-year deadline. Sweating bullets at this point, the old merchant desperately tried to gaslight the boy, calling it pure nonsense, while nervously shoving a rack of shiny blades in his face. He hyped up these relics, boasting they were ultra-rare drops you couldn't even farm in the deepest raid dungeons. He figured the astronomical price tags would easily chase the kid away, assuming this flashy display would bankrupt the teen instantly. Instead, Khalil just casually scanned the armory and flat out asked, "Is this seriously your best stash?" Spiraling into a full-blown panic, the merchant fiercely defended his ultra-rare inventory. But Khalil saw right through the lies, realizing the street legends about gnomes were totally accurate. They always keep the god-tier loot off the books. His eyes locked onto his true prize, a wicked forbidden ring adorned with 4 jagged fangs. That exact piece of jewelry was his sole reason for infiltrating this market. Defeated, the old man slowly slid over an impossibly gorgeous, heavily enchanted lockbox. Pulsing with raw, mythical energy, this wasn't just jewelry. It was a legendary war spoil gifted by Mog to the human race after they wrecked the Oracle. Here is the insane mechanic behind it. Those fangs literally siphon the wearer's life force to manifest an absolute defense. The harder it leeches, the more unbreakable the shield becomes. But there is one absolutely brutal catch. It has 0 safety limits. It will endlessly drain your mana until you drop dead on the spot. Good thing Khalil is built entirely different. His freakish genetics let him tank that deadly side effect like it's nothing. The merchant was completely baffled as to how this overpowered kid wandered into his parlor, but his inner capitalist took over, questioning if the boy actually had the funds to back up his talk. Smirking, Khalil dumped a massive pouch of blinding loot onto the counter, daring him to check the balance. With an eye for top-tier craftsmanship, the gnome appraised the stash, and his jaw practically hit the floor in sheer disbelief. We are talking pure, unadulterated elemental magic stones. Blinded by the sheer flex of this impossible wealth, the merchant instantly surrendered the cursed jewelry, completely forgetting its priceless personal history. Without hesitating, our MC slid the heavy metal onto his finger, letting the sharp fangs violently sink straight into his flesh. Looking absolutely drained from the adrenaline crash, the old man weakly broke the silence. He had to know how this teen possessed an encyclopedia's worth of knowledge about his lost civilization. Desperately pleading for any scraps of intel regarding his missing brethren, Khalil hit him with a devastating shrug, admitting his details were a little blurry. He crossed paths with them way back in the day, and while he couldn't drop a pin on their exact coordinates, the name of their secret sanctuary was forever burned into his brain. The second those words left his mouth, the merchant started vibrating with intense desperation, practically begging for the location of his scattered people. Khalil flashed a wicked smile, hinting he might just spill the tea, but playfully reminded the guy they were literally standing inside a corrupt underground syndicate, and premium secrets do not come for free. In a heart-stopping realization, the gnome understood that single breadcrumb of intel held more value than his entire mountain of gold. Our boy proved once again he's an absolute menace at business, effortlessly monetizing raw data. Flashback to his past life. That exact intel came straight from the old man's mouth, the ultimate cheat code that could have spared his entire clan. If only he had pinpointed their location before the war broke out. Luckily, Khalil snagged those exact coordinates the second they crossed paths. The black market bouncer flinched as the heavy trapdoor groaned open, absolutely baffled that the kid was already strolling out. Flashing his newly acquired loot, Khalil smirked, claiming it was a total speedrun. The guard's jaw practically hit the floor. He couldn't believe this kid actually scored something from the vault. You wouldn't even loot a gauntlet that insane from an S-rank dungeon. We're talking maxed out durability stacked with crazy magic resistance. Those gnome blacksmiths seriously do not miss when crafting legendary gear. Pacing through the gloomy alleys, a rogue lunged straight for our boy, dead set on sending him straight to the respawn screen. Surprised though, that gauntlet packed a slick hidden blade. Khalil casually parried the strike instantly, clipping his attacker and leaving him flatlining on the pavement. Testing out his new toy definitely hyped him up. Just then, Suwon sprinted onto the scene, scanning the kid for any scratch. That's when the captain locked eyes with the insane new gauntlet. Khalil gave a casual nod, completely keeping his mouth shut about the ultra-rare ring he also pocketed. Suwon warned him that the streets were already talking, meaning a whole wave of bounty hunters would be pulling up to jump him soon. Our boy literally could not care less though. In fact, he's actively praying the other bosses catch wind of the hype. Switching topics, he asked for Aiden's status, but the captain just shrugged, having totally lost track of the guy for a minute. Brushing it off, Khalil declared it was officially time to crash Dushala's place. That immediately spiked Suwon's anxiety levels. I mean, it was pitch black outside, and they hadn't even survived a full 24 hours on this cursed island yet. Yet they were already speedrunning the local bosses. Meanwhile, chilling in her mansion, Dushala just got word that the black market's vault had been breached. As the true shadow boss of that market, she was absolutely fuming. In her mind, Kama had zero right to crack that door without her direct green light. Letting that slide was not an option. She was convinced Kama had formed a squad with the absolute menace who just wiped out the Golden Lion. Going to war against a ghost is rough, especially since the mystery hitter was keeping a low profile. Plus, this kid clearly had insider knowledge, making him a super risky target. Barking an order, she sent her minion to the gnome's shop to audit the kid's shopping cart. The servant hesitated, fully aware that investigating client logs was totally taboo. But since she literally wrote the rulebook, she forced his hand. She wanted to rip this brat to shreds, and needed the intel to do it. Right mid-sentence, the heavy doors violently smashed open. Strolling in like he owned the joint, Khalil announced they could cancel the search party. Locking eyes with her crew, he dropped a massive threat to freeze their movements. He wasn't looking to catch a body tonight, but he'd drop them in a heartbeat if they tested him. He was banking on the boss lady having at least a couple of brain cells left. Her guards instantly sensed his killer aura, but Dushala just waved them off, telling them to chill. Considering the kid walked into her trap voluntarily, she gestured for him to grab a chair. Flickering candlelight cast shadows as the ultimate psychological chess match began. Demanding answers, she pressed him on his real motive for stepping onto her island. Khalil didn't waste a single breath, cutting straight to the chase. He pitched a massive business proposal, but she just scoffed, sizing the kid up as nothing but a greedy little amateur. Acknowledging the absolute chaos he'd already unleashed on her turf, he fully owned up to the fact that his appetite still wasn't satisfied. The Mafia Queen hit him with a reality check, claiming some goals are just untouchable, and even this lawless city had boundaries. Slowly drawing his blade, Khalil challenged that exact logic. He launched the dagger straight at her face with terrifying speed. She couldn't even blink, let alone dodge, but insanely enough, she wasn't the actual target. The steel pierced right through the heavy drapes, pinning something solid. Khalil mockingly clapped for their stealth stat before totally roasting how useless it was against him. A hidden shadow stalker slumped behind the fabric, instantly zeroed out. Flexing even harder, Khalil casually mentioned he already knew the tea she served was spiked with poison. Leaning back, he called her entire playbook washed up. He rattled off the local lore, Curran acting like a boomer aristocrat, Kama running wild as a brute, and Suwon caught in the middle as a hybrid. He painted the island as a chaotic masterpiece, calling her out specifically as an Eastern fugitive. Seriously spooked, Dushala demanded to know how this random kid hacked her background check. Khalil completely exposed her backstory. Back in her home city, every single kid was forced into a rogue boot camp so unhinged that 50% of them never made it out alive. Escaping to this brute-filled sanctuary was her only play to stop being manipulated like a pawn on somebody else's chessboard. But here's the irony. This whole island runs entirely on the underground market's cash flow. Trying to dodge the high society, Dushala accidentally chained herself right back to their wallets. She fully realized the only reason the Royal Empire hadn't deleted her yet was her alliance with the other mob bosses. But operating like that, the city was on a ticking timer. Escaping the aristocrats' radar forever was pure delusion. Dropping the lore dump, Khalil leaned in with the real question. Did Dushala have the guts to conquer a way bigger map? Glaring at him, she snapped back, asking if this cocky teenager thought defending a neutral zone boxed in by hostile kingdoms was some kind of joke. With a smirk, he admitted the difficulty was cranked to max, but his confidence was absolutely off the charts. He clarified that the ultimate expansion pack he was pitching wasn't limited to seizing just a single, boring nation. He was plotting to construct a massive shadow syndicate that would literally wrap around the entire continent. Meanwhile, out in the freezing hallway, Swan was pacing nervously. While our main character was in there cooking up a master plan, the captain nearly had a heart attack until those heavy doors finally swung open, flooding him with pure relief that the kid hadn't been packed up. Seeing the captain genuinely stressing over him actually caught Khalil off guard, though it was totally justified, considering he just solo-raided the turf of the deadliest woman on the island. Way different from a meathead like Kama, this queen had crazy deep ties to the elite aristocrats, and our duo had just officially declared war on her whole network. Suwan narrows his eyes, demanding to know why Khalil is so dead set that this girl will actually say yes to his crazy deal. The kid isn't exactly thrilled about taking a massive gamble here. Striking back is completely off the table for the moment. Plus, if those stuck-up nobles catch wind of this, their fragile peace is instantly toast. But the clock is ticking, because the witch hunt for heretics is still raging outside, and they have to pull off a massive rescue op. The real headache, figuring out how to herd every single barbarian into this exact spot. Khalil's master plan used the legendary clout of the Slave King as absolute bait, and Suwan is literally the only guy carrying that kind of weight. But the kid needs these refugees, marching in willingly, dropping a quick reminder that Suwan swore to hand over that specific island. To make that happen, he drops a heavy question: do they need to flat out erase every single chief running that turf? Suddenly, Khalil locks onto Suwan's tattooed wrist, calling his bluff. He knows the guy lied. The Red Eye tribe doesn't rock that specific ink. He drops the bomb. Suwan is actually the fourth chief of Tatur, the undisputed boss of the underground ring. Suwan just freezes completely, mind blown that this kid uncovered his deepest secret. With the cat out of the bag, Khalil casually tells the captain to meet him in the blood-soaked sands of the arena right at sunrise. Flashback time. When the oracle originally dropped in, Khalil got dragged to the royal palace, but those elites just laughed in his face because he was just some savage barbarian. He desperately needed to flex his actual worth. Out of nowhere, Oliver steps up, tossing him a wild proposition right in front of the snobby aristocrats. The deal: conquer the underground arena, take the crown, and they'd finally respect him. Khalil didn't just win, he totally dominated, becoming the youngest champion in history. Literally sweeping through 75 brutal matches without a single loss. That flawless streak earned him the ultimate victor's mark, the exact same wrist tattoo Suwan is hiding. Cut back to the present. Khalil is chilling in the center of the Colosseum waiting for his target. Heavy footsteps echo as Swan steps out, decked out in pure heavy-duty gladiator gear. This is their very first clash, and the kid knows he's staring down an absolute unit of a warrior. Honestly, Khalil's adrenaline is absolutely spiking, because he finally found a punching bag that won't break when he goes 100%. The reigning king of the bloodsport is locked in to defend his throne. Just checking out his footwork, Khalil instantly clocks it, the legendary 8th form of Valvent. This guy isn't just a brawler, he's a straight-up martial arts god. And his entire existence revolves around one thing: grinding his technique to absolute perfection, hitting the peak of human combat and mastering that mythical stance. The craziest part, Suwan claimed the arena crown, spamming literally just 2 moves he picked up back in the day. If this dude had unlocked the rest of the skill tree, he'd be an unstoppable walking natural disaster. Without warning, he explodes off the ground, rushing our main boy. Rumor has it that Valvant, right before he kicked the bucket, was intensely salty about never taking Suwan under his wing. Even though the Grandmaster hated having students, our protagonist knows he has to rewrite that tragic history. Right here in this specific timeline. Boom, the two titans finally collide. Suwan fights like a beast, swinging his heavy metal gauntlets with insane precision. But Khalil easily parries the savage hooks with his blade. The kid instantly senses the crazy durability of those gloves, asking if they were forged by the legendary Miyu clan. Suwan nods, bragging that he bagged them as champion loot. He flexes that anything hammered out by the dwarves packs the absolute hardest steel in the game. Slipping past a lethal right hook, Khalil totally agrees. Still, he's kind of shocked that the arena boss is deflecting his lethal strikes like it's a walk in the park. Meanwhile, Swan is having a massive wake-up call. He totally slept on this kid's skills. There is physically no way someone this young should be moving like a seasoned vet. The only logical answer: bro must have been grinding combos while still in the womb. But playtime is over. Khalil prepares to unleash a massively overpowered skill, flooding his weapon with pure blinding aura. At first glance, Suwan thinks it's just basic magic, but zooming in, that glowing energy feels completely alien. Clueless about what's coming, every alarm bell in his head is screaming. This is lethal, and the kid is shifting into an entirely different, terrifying rhythm. It's an attack that totally ignores sharpness. This isn't about slicing, it's pure, earth-shattering kinetic destruction. Smash Khalil's blow violently atomizes the dwarven gauntlets into metallic dust, and the sheer shockwave launches the massive gladiator backward through the air, sending him ragdolling until he brutally craters into the solid concrete wall. Sitting in the rubble with his armor completely shredded, Suon's brain is short-circuiting, trying to process what just hit him. That wasn't just your standard-issue mana, slash. The match is instantly over. Khalil strolls up, extending a hand to the fallen king casually, asking if that beatdown settled the score. Suon had literally left his entire soul on that battlefield, and still got folded. Surprisingly, that total loss just brought him massive inner peace. He has zero complaints about the outcome. Khalil wipes some sweat, realizing how dangerously close that was. If he hadn't pulled his punch at the last microsecond, he would have straight up deleted a crucial ally. He pulled this insane stunt because after crushing 2 major tribal bosses, he's praying this new street cred buys him some serious quiet time. But more importantly, he's got a specific guy in mind to actually run this chaotic turf. That guy is Suon, a rare hybrid blending raw barbarian blood with imperial roots. Literally, the absolute perfect man for the job. Khalil looks him dead in the eye, stating the endgame is officially here. It is time to hunt down Tatur's darkest secret. A heavy offer had just been pitched to Duchala. It was purely her genius that kept this underground city thriving, balancing the blood-soaked arena with the shady black market. But even her magic touch has a breaking point. Using its reputation as a total free-for-all zone, they easily reeled in the savage tribes, while completely ghosting the Empire's radar. They were pulling in ruthless fighters left and right, absolutely cranking the city's madness meter to the maximum. But even with the legendary Slave King, keeping all the moving parts from exploding, the whole operation was dangling by a dangerously thin thread. Khalil flips the script, tossing Duchala, an absolute masterstroke of a lifeline. Suon leans in completely hooked, begging for the breakdown. The game plan. Pure, unfiltered intel. Tatur isn't just some random spot. It is the absolute dead center of a massive waterway slicing straight through the continent. Sure, riding those rapids is the ultimate fast travel trick, but the raging currents make it practically a suicide mission. Except Suon is built different and can totally tame those waters. Plus, this lawless hub is the literal only safe zone, where elite snobs from all 3 kingdoms flock to buy dirty secrets. It is the ultimate underground nexus. The gears start turning in Suon's head as he clocks the kid's real ambition, monopolizing global commerce. Merchant life means ultimate freedom to roam the map, and that is exactly the vibe Khalil is going for right now. Suon is the sole player skilled enough to execute this insane logistics flex. Standing before the surviving bosses, Khalil lays out his grand chessboard. He is mapping out a massive supply chain linking endless territories, sparking right here. Tatur is about to glow up into the beating heart of the world. A shadow syndicate stretching beneath the Emperor's nose. Duchala sits there, low-key floored by the sheer audacity of this kid. Still playing merchant is risky business. She assumes this rookie has zero clue about the brutal fate waiting for black market data brokers. Sensing she suspects him of being an Imperial Fed, Khalil shuts down the paranoia by flexing a hyper-rare token gifted by his dad. These underworld veterans take one glance at the crest and collectively freeze. They know exactly what kind of terrifying authority that badge holds. Keeping his sources strictly classified, he stares them down, dropping straight facts. If you want top-tier power, you have to gamble with your life. Whipping out his old man's relic wasn't plan A. Duchala is sweating because that specific hardware is exclusively handed to apex predators. The Black Ops shadows running the Empire's dirtiest jobs. She knew Khalil was out of the box, but this level of clout is straight up unhinged. Her skepticism evaporates, yet she drops a reality check. Peddling whispers will not bankroll a whole civilization. Defense budgets require heavy coin. Kama chimes in backing her up. Top dog hustlers need physical inventory, not just rumors. You cannot run a monopoly on empty shelves. Right on cue, Khalil pivots to the Kanatra Mountains, a completely wrecked wasteland wedged between Tatur and the 3 kingdoms of Istria. But plot twist, a colossal motherlode of pristine magic gems is hiding right under the dirt. We are talking an exclusive mega stash of ultra-rare octagonal crystals. The entire map is totally clueless about this spawn point, but the Imperial watchdogs are already catching the scent. Khalil smirks, proposing they hijack the loot before anyone else catches on. Duchala visualizes the insane profit margins, but her brain screams caution. Even barren dirt has a landlord, making her hesitation entirely valid. Cue the target Baron Beryl from Istan. Once hailed as an absolute genius, this specific aristocrat holds the deed. Now he is just a washed-up creep, blinded by infinite greed and chasing skirts. Khalil leans in, asking what motivates a total sellout. Zero morals, pure cash. Plus the crusty geezer moonlights as a mage, meaning he will desperately try to hoard the excavation privileges. Khalil shuts down their panic, swearing this intel is 100% his personal stash, completely untracked by the regime. Listening to this mastermind, Dushala feels a massive wave of relief washing over her. Meanwhile, Kama is getting super impatient, whining that this powwow is dragging and needs to fast forward. Suwon instantly verbally obliterates the unhealthy boomer, demanding some basic respect for the reigning boss. Ignoring the drama, Khalil prepares to drop the ultimate spoiler about their hometown. Flashback 1,000 years, way before the Emperor even existed. This turf was originally an impenetrable dwarven stronghold packed with mythical tech. Smooth as ice, he jams his bladed gauntlet right into a tiny groove in the brickwork. The stone grinds open, exposing a hidden vault. Dushala is visibly shaking. She had no idea she was sleeping on top of this. Khalil explains that radar magic is completely useless here. You strictly need authentic dwarven or gnome hardware to unlock it. Huge shout out to Mog for the cheat codes. Homeboy is definitely getting a reward when he wakes up. Stepping into the cavernous chamber, the local kingpins literally drop their jaws. Sitting right in front of them is a legendary relic from a deleted timeline. The sheer scale of the vessel leaves them completely paralyzed. Khalil hypes it up. This is non-human engineering, a literal cheat code for warfare. It lacks flying physics, but it absolutely shreds through violent rapids like a hot knife through butter. Forged by the ultimate grandmaster, Perval. The absolute last of its kind on the map, this mechanical titan represents the Muir bloodline. Dushala is spiraling, realizing her slums used to be an apocalyptic bunker. It is an absolute game changer for future clashes. But honestly, she is just deeply terrified by how a random teen possesses this level of ancient secrets. Starstruck Suwon questions if the Iron Beast actually runs. Smirking Khalil just tells them to keep their eyes peeled. With a few savage slashes of his blade, he shatters the massive iron restraints. Gravity kicks in, and the colossal ship screeches down the ramp. Centuries of dust wash away as it brutally crashes into the surf. Suwon is fanboying hard while Dushala internally screams at the kid's unhinged recklessness. Khalil does not care. These toys are meant to be broken out. The cowardly emperor shoved these magical age weapons in the vault out of pure terror. But Khalil is not playing defense. He plans to squeeze every ounce of chaos out of this firepower, even if the engine needs a tune-up first. To get it battle-ready, he is outsourcing the restoration to the underground dwarf mechanics. Vibing with the vision, Suwon raises his hand. Completely hyped, he begs for a VIP tour inside the metallic Leviathan. Khalil flashes a grin, feeding off that exact chaotic energy. Khalil has steered this exact ship in his past life, and every single detail is burned into his memory. He is absolutely hyped to witness the continent absolutely lose their minds when this massive beast drops from the sky, hyping up his crew with the ultimate flex that this is just step one. Deep down, he knows his pitch totally hooked them. Since his whole chat with Dushala was a calculated chess move, he is banking on her buying his act because she is his golden ticket to manipulating that guy. Let us be real, Baron Beryl is literally just a bald, greedy creep. That is exactly why Khalil had Dushala throw an insane bag of cash at his territory, even dangling magic stones in front of his face, promising a massive stash the second his signature hit the dotted line. It is the ultimate bait to make any Imperial mage totally sell out. Once that domino falls, they can map out the mining operation and lock down the cash flow. Mid-thought, Aiden rolls up looking incredibly stoked. He flexes that he finally tracked down his little sister, dragging her over to meet the dude who bailed him out at the docks. But Khalil already has her entire file in his head. He knows Zook is a literal freak of nature who can casually dislocate and morph her own joints, using a top-tier shifting technique. Her real face is a total mystery. Back in his previous timeline, this duo hard-carried Oliver by wiping out rogue aristocrats. Knowing they could totally derail his endgame, Khalil actually weighs the option of just flat-out deleting them right here and now. And for a split second, his pure killing intent leaks out. Instantly, the siblings feel the phantom sensation of their heads being violently ripped from their necks. It was a brutal power move just to rattle them, pulling back before doing the deed. Aiden is left practically shaking, absolutely terrified by that dark aura. Flipping the switch, Khalil plays the clueless innocent card, asking what is wrong. Aiden stammers out that he is fine. But internally, the dude is screaming because he just felt the Grim Reaper breathing down his neck. However, recognizing their insane S-tier stats, Khalil refuses to throw away talent like that. He decides to keep them on a tight leash, totally confident he can brainwash them to his side. Locking eyes with Aiden, he straight up praises his raw skills, tossing out a partnership offer. He casually drops that he knew the arm injury from their first meetup was a total fake-out. Regardless, Khalil only rolls with top-tier assets. He offers them free rent at his base, but obviously there is a massive catch. He teases an upcoming field trip to a super crazy location, casually name-dropping the legendary mercenary syndicate. That instantly drops the siblings' jaws. Khalil assumes Aiden is digging the vibe, but the vibe is actually pure panic. The boy claims he is just launching a startup and simply needs some heavy hitters for security. Meanwhile, Aiden is internally spiraling, realizing he just walked into a massive trap. He literally cannot fathom how this random kid is trying to hire underground legends as simple bodyguards. His brain is completely short-circuiting. He trusts Zook to gather solid intel, but the main boss-level puzzle is figuring out Khalil's actual identity. That crew is pure bad news, and their boss is literally one of the continent's top 5 blade legends. He might actually be the sole fighter, capable of soloing Count McGovern, and now Aiden is sweating bullets, trying to read Khalil's endgame. The boy notes that while this gang is famous, their home base is practically a ghost story. People only whisper about it, but Khalil is about to expose the absolute truth behind the myths. Ditching their rides, they trek toward a hidden zone, admitting that finding them is supposed to be mathematically impossible, considering these hitters only touch dirt 14 days out of the entire year. Suddenly, a massive gale rips through the air. For Khalil, this blast of wind is pure nostalgia, even though technically this timeline is their very first encounter. Eclipsing the sky above them is an absolute titan of an airship. The kid finally crosses paths with the legends. Right on cue, a security squad instantly shoves steel spears in their faces, locking down the perimeter. The guards aggressively bark out, demands questioning, exactly who they are, and why they are trespassing. Khalil claps back with zero hesitation, warning them to worry more about how he tracked their ghost ship, demanding an audience with Captain Gordon to buy their services. Right then, a dude rocking blue hair struts out from the shadows, smirking and telling the kid that real fans know the actual protocol. These hitters exclusively take contracts through their official underground brokers. Khalil instantly clocks him as Luke the Syndicate's second-in-command. In the past, when Gordon was nerfed by a deadly sickness, this crew got turned into mindless Imperial dogs, proving someone was secretly kissing the Emperor's boots long before the boss croaked. A literal rat was hiding in their ranks. Khalil is fully determined to cancel that future, coldly staring Luke down and demanding the alpha, making it crystal clear he does not negotiate with underlings. Luke catches the vibe real quick. If this kid is pushing this hard for Gordon, he is completely fine with betting his own life. The boy has zero chill. Aiden frantically whispers to Suan that they are entering the danger zone, but Suan simply says to let the kid cook. With a sharp snap of his fingers, Luke caves. A heavy metal hatch grinds open, revealing the dark belly of the flying fortress. Luke agrees to grant them VIP access, but bluntly warns that surviving the meetup is entirely on them. All of that is just a textbook intimidation tactic aimed right at our main guy. Fast forward to the boss room. Gordon growls that it has been 30 long years since anyone had the guts to request a face-to-face contract, leaning in and fiercely demanding to know who the hell this teenager actually is. Standing in his shadow, Khalil realizes the sheer terrifying gravity this warlord radiates. Up close, the dude is a literal beast. Back in his past life, some chronic illness ended up wiping him out. So locking eyes with him right now hits totally different. The kid instantly knew if this absolute unit clashed with his dad, the fight would be a coin toss. Sweat started pooling immediately. Sure, Khalil's a prodigy, but he's still trapped inside a scrawny 12-year-old body. One deep rumble from Gordon's vocal cords had Swan shaking in his boots. The bloodlust, off the charts. This guy was ready to slaughter them on the spot. Swallowing his fear, Khalil stepped up to the plate. He looked the warlord dead in the eye and offered to buy out his mercenary squad. Gordon smirked, warning the brat that his crew costs a massive fortune. But our boy didn't even flinch, promising to buy every single one of them, and drop a hefty tip on top of it. That bold claim actually threw Gordon for a loop. A massive grin crept onto the warlord's face, amused that this kid basically called his elite squad cheap. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Pivot time. Khalil confidently brought up the warlord's flying ship. That instantly hooked Gordon's attention. Pointing straight up, the boy boldly claimed he could keep that massive vessel cruising through the sky 365 days a year. Now fully invested, the giant leaned in. He demanded to know if the kid was secretly running with dwarven engineers or gnome mechanics. Khalil casually brushed it off, claiming he flies solo. Skeptical, the merc boss challenged him, asking how a literal child understood complex aeronautics. Without missing a beat, our MC dropped the mic. The entire secret lay in the mana crystals powering the ship's engine. Right now, they were burning through 5 separate stones just to stay airborne. Sure, the original concept was pretty solid, but it desperately needed a central core to stabilize the energy output. The ultimate fix. Fusing them all into one mega crystal. Gordon immediately snapped, his aura flaring up. He barked that fusion was absolute suicide and would just trigger a catastrophic explosion. Khalil stood his ground, firing back that blowouts only happen when you use trash, low-tier fragments. Flawless gems play by totally different rules. He started dropping facts about flawless octagonal mana cores. When you sync them up with matching types, the energy flow becomes smooth like butter. Squinting hard, Gordon called his bluff. Did this tiny punk actually possess those absurdly rare artifacts? Khalil smirked. If his pockets were empty, he wouldn't have dared stepping foot in this base. He laid the bait, telling Gordon to seriously consider partnering up. That sheer, unbothered confidence finally broke the warlord. He cracked a massive smile, admitting the kid was built different. But playtime was officially over. The vibe instantly darkened. Gordon leaned down, whispering a lethal threat. What was stopping him from just slaughtering the boy and looting the stones? Pure, unfiltered terror spiked through Khalil's veins. Dude practically needed a new pair of pants. In a literal blink, Gordon vanished from his throne. Suwan and Aiden were completely blind to the movement. Even our MC could barely process the incoming strike. Gordon's voice echoed out, reminding the kid of one brutal reality. If you want to run business with the big boss, you have to survive at least one hit from him. And honestly, the warlord thought this little brat was way too delusional about making it out of here alive. Secretly, Gordon prayed the kid would block it. He even tossed out an insane offer mid-swing. If the boy survived, he'd crown him vice captain on the spot. Hearing that, Luke practically frothed at the mouth with pure jealousy. But Khalil, still dripping in swag, he clapped back that he'd only sign up if he got the main captain's chair. But internally, our boy was sweating bullets. He knew deep down that without his enchanted gauntlet eating the impact, his arm would be soaring across the room right now. A massive reality check that this world is crawling with absolute monsters. Flipping his blade to reveal a fresh streak of crimson, Khalil coldly asked if they were still treating him like a joke, just because he hasn't hit puberty yet. Gordon glanced down. Only then did the behemoth realize his own flesh had been sliced open. Taking damage from a child was literally 0% probable in his mind. Hearts pounding, our MC stood his ground, waiting to see how this high-stakes gamble would play out. He totally believed that landing a critical hit meant he had just secured a rock-solid alliance with the king of brutality himself. A massive flex that someone like Oliver could never dream of pulling off. Staring at his own blood, Gordon went totally silent, finally whispering that the clash was actually fun. Then, channeling some crazy dark aura, the warlord literally closed the gaping wound in seconds. Watching from the sidelines next to Aiden, Swan's jaw was on the floor. Both of them were thinking the exact same thing. There is zero chance that monster is human. Meanwhile, Luke was absolutely mind-blown by the kid's crazy reflexes, deflecting a lethal blow and drawing blood from the apex predator. Insane. A suffocating dead silence swallowed the entire hall. Then the giant raging meathead of a warlord let out a booming laugh. But the vibe snapped instantly. His face shifted into a stone-cold, deadly glare as he announced that he actually liked the brat. Hearing that, a massive wave of relief washed over Khalil. Surviving with his life intact, totally justified, needing a fresh change of pants. Without wasting another second, the Lord of Brutality barked at his grunts to fetch the official paperwork. Tapping into a surprising amount of elegance, the giant parked himself at the desk. Turns out, the walking tank actually knew how to read and write. He snatched up a feather quill, and the second the ink hit the parchment, it glowed with some wild magic. Staring down the kid, the apex predator asked if he truly grasped the weight of signing a blank check contract. Khalil didn't stutter. He confirmed it meant absolute, unquestioning loyalty to whatever the other party demanded. No loopholes, no takebacks. Giving a kid that much power was a massive gamble for the warlord, too. But the harbinger of violence stated the facts. The boy parried a kill shot and managed to draw first blood. That alone made him completely worthy of forging an unbreakable alliance. The surrounding mercs nodded in quiet agreement, even though they knew this deal was dangerously unpredictable. Standing nearby, Luke was just straight-up short-circuiting, unable to process what just happened. This kid just locked in an alliance with the captain, using a literal magic contract. Naturally, our battle-hardened guy absolutely hates the idea. Built like a tank and scarred by pure violence, the man finally demands the kid's name. Stepping up, our protagonist drops a proper ice-cold introduction. Meanwhile, Luke breaks down the mercenary market. Every single hired blade rocks a custom price tag, depending on their combat tier. Luke guides Carol into the drafting room packed with available fighters. But the second our boy snatches the roster sheet, Luke instantly feels completely ghosted. Scanning the list, Carol locks in his final draft picks. He is rolling out with Mikhail, Tyrell, and Morris. If things get messy out in the field, he might snag some backup, but he will just hit up the guild's local branches for that later. Luke is genuinely stunned to see Mikhail's name on the list. The dude is a total rookie who barely just joined the squad. Rolling his eyes, Luke figures Carol is just a clueless kid making a rookie mistake. Shrugging it off, the captain summons the two veterans in the room, along with their wild card, the infamous Mikhail. But Carol, he is secretly hyped. Why? Because he already knows exactly who this guy becomes from his past life. Snapping a crisp salute, Mikhail reports for duty. The vice captain breaks down their upcoming operation, tossing the heavy tactical details straight to Morris, the highest-ranking muscle in the room. Our boy smoothly glides over to Mikhail, flashing a smile and saying it is an absolute honor to finally cross paths. The fresh-faced mercenary just stares, totally weirded out by this literal child, radiating heavy grown boss energy. Locking hands, Kirill instantly feels the rough, heavily calloused skin and casually asks how long he has been grinding. Mikhail admits he has been swinging a blade for 5 solid years. Honestly, he is low-key regretting his life choices right now, thinking his debut mission is just babysitting some spoiled noble's kid. Khalil drops some genuine respect for the grind. Blushing slightly, the mercenary humbly admits he just got lucky stumbling upon his captain. Stepping in, Luke strongly urges our protagonist to swap the rookie for a seasoned vet, claiming it is his professional duty to hook him up with top-tier talent. But Khalil completely flips the script with a genius loophole. He is keeping the rookie, but he is only paying the bill for 2 fighters. Oh, and he drops one massive wild condition. Mikhail is absolutely forbidden from carrying a sword. Panic instantly washes over Mikhail. Without his blade, he is basically a sitting duck, but our boy's mind is already flashing back to brutal blood-soaked memories, remembering the exact moment they first met. A future Mikhail was casually leaning against a mountain of slaughtered monsters, while Khalil praised his absolute carnage. Back then, Khalil had asked if he ran with the mercenaries. The man had nodded, dropping his name, and Khalil knows damn well that joining that specific squad is no walk in the park. The veteran had explained that 8 years prior, a massive monster wave wiped through his hometown, just as the mercenaries were rolling through. That chaotic night was when he met Gordon. However, Khalil bluntly states that wielding a blade does not automatically make you a master, and swordsmanship definitely was not what helped Mikhail obliterate those beasts. Mikhail's brain practically short-circuits hearing this. But hey, that is exactly what the ancient dragon confirmed. The dude's true calling has literally zero to do with swords, and Mog is dead set on that fact. Khalil points out that if Mikhail had never crossed paths with Gordon, his entire destiny would have flipped upside down. Yet against all odds, the young mercenary is still kicking and throws hands like a beast, absorbing every brutal lesson his captain threw at him. Looking at him now, our protagonist realizes this kid is completely blind to his own insane potential. But since they have crossed paths before the timeline goes sideways, Khalil can literally rewrite his fate. He is about to hard-launch Mikhail into a completely different lane, because this dude was always destined to be a top-tier mage. Shifting gears, our boy slides a tightly sealed scroll over to Suwon. Its ultimate destination, Dushala. Suwon pauses, asking if the kid is actually going to survive out there. Khalil just smirks, radiating pure confidence since his squad can easily hold their own. Plus, they desperately need the captain's clearance to breach the gates of Tatur. Moving the remaining heavy hitters to Dushala is an absolute must right now. Inside that very letter sits a step-by-step master plan for Suwon. Khalil is betting everything on their teamwork, fully expecting them to completely shatter his expectations, holding down the fort until they secure the territory and start strip mining the rare minerals. The whole operation is set to take exactly 1 year. If he pulls this off before the holy war against the Oracle kicks off, Khalil can literally rewrite the entire continent's destiny. But for now, he needs to hyper-focus on leveling himself up. It is time to hit the road with his hired muscle, and there is one highly specific spot he needs to drag Mikhail to. When the confused rookie asks where they are heading, our protagonist casually drops the bomb. They are marching straight into the magical capital of Azor. It is a flawlessly engineered, jaw-dropping masterpiece of a city. The absolute second they step through the gates, Mikhail's mind is blown by the sheer aesthetic. It literally feels like stepping through a portal into another dimension. Khalil catches the kid vibrating with pure hype. Starstruck Mikhail admits he has never set foot in a metropolis even close to this massive. And honestly, this is not just your average kingdom, because it is home to the legendary Ivory Tower and the Council of Immortals. This exact ground was established by the 7 ancient elders who literally seeded magic across the entire continent. Not to mention the absolute unit of a central tower was constructed by Alan Javius way before Azor even existed. Mikhail soaks up the lore, completely mind-blown, that absolute legends were flexing their power that far back. Plot twist, our protagonist has actually never been here either, since he spent his entire past life locked in brutal arena death matches. Hitting the streets, they immediately split the party. Aiden takes on the quest to secure a solid inn while a clueless Mikhail asks what his mission is. Oh, our protagonist has a very specific side quest lined up. He orders the rookie to march right up and register for the city's massive tournament under Khalil's name. Blinking in shock, the young mercenary asks if his new boss is seriously planning to throw down in a hardcore magic showdown, and our boy just confirms it with a smirk. The merc is tagging along for the ride. Think of this tournament like the Tater Deathmatch, but for spellcasters. Top-tier mages from every corner of the map are pulling up to flex their raw power. It is the ultimate proving ground. Waving a sealed letter, our guy tells the merc this piece of parchment is his golden ticket, dropping heavy hints that it cost a literal fortune. Aiden spots the wax stamp of Baron Barrel, immediately realizing Khalil did not come to play. He is calculating every single move. The hired blade is visibly stressing, but our boy instantly cools the vibe, promising him they will just blend into the background. He brushes it off as a basic invite from some boomer wizard, but admits the VIP pass definitely scores them some sweet perks. The main mission right now, get officially registered for the bloodbath. They set a rally point at the plaza in exactly 60 minutes. The merc nods, locking in the plan. With the deadweight gone, our MC finally pivots to his real endgame. Dushala previously tipped him off that the Grand Archive is the absolute holy grail for his search, practically overflowing with forbidden lore. But Khalil has zero interest in playing corporate politics, or joining a magic guild, straight up asking her how a solo player navigates this mess. Her wild suggestion: with his insane talent, he should just hijack the entire council. Honestly, our boy had already cooked up that exact hostile takeover in his head, and he is planning to pull the trigger on it real soon. The woman just stares, totally paralyzed, trying to figure out if he is memeing or dead serious. Route A to bagging those spellbooks, snatching first place in the tournament. The catch: it is practically a suicide mission, because the grand finale is rigged to be a clash of titans between the Dawn Council and the Immortals. But wait, the plot thickens. Down in the shadows of this metropolis, underground operators are lurking everywhere. Phantom thieves who can lift those legendary grimoires without leaving a single trace. If RNG is on his side, Khalil could actually score a tier 4 tome. Dushala claims she has the hookup for this dark web transaction, and Khalil immediately demands the target's name. Touching down in Azor, the very first contact on the list is Bargo Sira. That name hits our MC like a jump scare. Catching his flinch, Dushala questions if they have history, forcing our guy to slap on an Oscar-winning poker face and play dumb. Brushing past it, she reveals this ghost is the absolute boss of the Alka Syndicate, the detail that sends a shiver down his spine. This kingpin is heavily tied to the wooden cloud. Our boy literally just wanted to cop some reading material. Stumbling backward into the crosshairs of that shadow organization is an insanely lucky glitch in the Matrix. Khalil has been keeping a low profile, waiting for a crack exactly like this. Ever since the Arden incident, his intel on the cult hit a brick wall, especially since that previous wizard was completely useless at dropping names. But this new lore drop is a mind-blowing puzzle piece. Baker was throwing signs for the Alka Guild way before he sold his soul to the wooden cloud. Math says there have to be at least 2 moles deeply embedded in that crew. Honestly, the entire Alka Syndicate might just be a massive front for the cult. Hungry for the truth, Khalil shifts into full detective mode. The magical metropolis is lit up like neon signs at midnight, projecting this fake aura of total security. But just beneath the glitz and glamour, a rotting pitch-black underbelly pulses in the slums. Stepping into the gutter, Khalil orders the junkies sprawled across the pavement to scatter, locking his eyes straight on a shady boarded-up door. The second the words leave his mouth, the shadows start moving. A pack of incredibly sketchy thugs creeps out, boxing our boy in from all sides. Khalil smirks, noting they might have a slight issue with his VIP access, just as a goon flashes a lethal blade. The MC instantly clocks that these are not your average street rats. They are hired muscle. Announcing he has zero time for side quests, a thug lunges only to get his attack absolutely demolished in a split-second counter. Yeah, that shattered wrist is definitely never functioning right again. The attacker, who had been playing the silent tough guy, suddenly unleashes a blood-curdling shriek before getting ruthlessly slammed into the concrete. Treating the fight like a basic warm-up, Khalil casually tosses the limp body aside. He stares down the surviving crew, asking who else wants to drink their meals through a plastic tube. For the rest of their miserable lives, total panic washes over the gang. Our protagonist sighs, accepting the harsh reality that ultimate violence is the only language these bottom feeders understand. Kicking the door open, our boy steps into a dim room where a sketchy old guy is scribbling away at a desk. The man barely looks up, asking if he is a buyer, immediately barking that the tournament has him swamped, and his books are entirely closed to new clients. Unbothered, Khalil casually compliments the heavy-duty bouncers out front, noting he finally gets why they are on the payroll. Cutting to the chase, he drops Dushala as his personal reference and demands a face-to-face with Bargo Sira. Slapping the official voucher onto the table, he clearly states he is here to drop heavy cash on some premium spellbooks. Grumbling under his breath, the merchant slides a stack of dusty tomes across the wood aggressively, reminding the kid that he does not just bend the rules for anyone. The only reason he is even entertaining this deal is out of pure, unadulterated respect for Dushala's word. Skimming the pages at lightning speed, Khalil realizes this stash is absolute garbage. Barely an upgrade from the basic lore he speed-read back at his father's estate. Spotting absolutely nothing past Tier 2 magic, he aggressively calls out the scam. The old man instantly gets defensive, claiming high-tier loot is not exactly growing on trees. Unless you are wearing the fancy robes of the Inner Council, tracking down advanced grimoires on the black market is pretty much mission impossible. Khalil smirks, telling him that is the exact reason he pulled up. Dushala put her name on the line, promising access to Tier 4 heat bare minimum. Sweating a bit, the old merchant strongly suggests the kid just swallow his pride and pledge loyalty to a guild. Deciding to dial up the pressure, Khalil notes the dealer is acting ridiculously uncooperative. Tapping the wax seal on his VIP document, he coldly states he is done repeating himself. The merchant goes completely pale, struck with absolute terror. That signature belongs to the legendary Beryl. Leaning in, our boy orders the trembling man to hand-deliver the letter to Bargo Sira, demanding an audience with the boss. He caps it off by casually mentioning how trash the customer service has been so far. The old-timer immediately backed down, but thanks to our boy absolutely burying that letter into the solid wood, the geezer couldn't even yank it free. Trembling like a leaf, he actually had to beg Khalil for an assist. With that flex out of the way, they finally escorted our protagonist into the back rooms. The guy waiting for them tried to smooth things over, apologizing for his lackey's massive disrespect. Stepping out of the shadows was this heavily bearded, wildly overweight boss. Enter Bargo Sira. Seeing this guy in the flesh made Khalil's blood boil, but he completely masked his pure rage behind a stone-cold poker face. The heavyweight merchant already had the scoop on the recommendation letter, but Khalil was not there to play around. He demanded top-tier magical texts, strictly anything above the second tier. Bargo threw some shade, mentioning the recommending baron had a pretty garbage reputation, though he admitted the seal still carried some weight. Skipping the small talk entirely, our boy demanded to see the absolute best loot they had stashed away in the vault. The boss laid down the law, pass a vibe check, and the premium library opens up. That little screening curveball totally caught Khalil off guard. Bargo whipped out a glowing crystal orb used for verifying actual power. Seeing that artifact instantly hyped our protagonist up, totally shocked that a shady black market joint would harbor such high-level tech. Apparently, careless mages tossed those recommendation papers around like candy, forcing the underground shop to run these brutal background checks. The orb safely scans a person's absolute mana capacity. All the kid had to do was slap his palm on the glass and let his aura rip. That single reading would literally make or break his access. And despite never touching this specific gear in his current body, Khalil knew exactly how it ticked thanks to his past life memories. Knowing it perfectly gauges raw mana, he was practically buzzing to see his own monstrous stats. He casually asked if they kept 4th-tier grimoires or maybe even higher. Bargo internally scoffed, figuring this kid was barely scraping the intermediate ranks. The boss smirked, warning him that 5th-tier knowledge costs an absolute fortune. But that only made Khalil grin harder, realizing cash was his golden ticket to the god-tier spells. The hefty merchant bragged that his underground network could source literally anything. Yet in his head, he knew even absolute prodigies grinded for decades just to sniff the 5th level. He chalked Khalil up as just another arrogant rookie. Ignoring the disrespect, our boy ordered him to prep the inventory, slamming his hand down and unleashing his mana core into the glass. The sheer suffocating pressure instantly choked the entire room. Khalil was not just taking a test, he was violently flexing his boundless potential. The raw energy straight up shattered the artifact into dust, blasting a massive shockwave that ripped Bargo's hat clean off, exposing a flawlessly shiny bald head. Khalil mentally cringed at blowing up the scanner. Meanwhile, Bargo was literally trembling. It's in pure terror, realizing this monster had already blown past the 4th-tier limits. The machine literally could not handle his aura. Without missing a beat, Khalil coldly demanded to raid the premium vault. Bargo scrambled like an obedient puppy to comply. But behind his panicked eyes, his brain was working overtime, desperate to lock down this prodigy, before a rival guild swooped in. Securing this kid was a literal jackpot. A bit later, the merchant aggressively pitched a guild recruitment offer, promising unlimited access to insane crafting materials and swearing on his life that his syndicate basically owned the entire city. But our guy drew a total blank. This faction never even popped up in his past life radar. Still, he connected the dots, sensing Bargo had a shady pipeline leading straight to Baker. Khalil pressed him to empty the vaults. Desperate to impress the walking nuke, Bargo triggered a mechanism exposing a heavily guarded secret stash. The boss acted like he was gifting him the world, but Khalil totally deadpanned at the spread, every single text maxed out at the 4th tier. He grabbed a dusty manual on Windblades. Technically just a 3rd-tier move, but so insanely lethal that the Magic Council had blacklisted it completely. Spotting some wildly rare crafting drops buried in the corner, Khalil figured keeping this balding merchant on a leash might actually be a massive win. Bargo was foaming at the mouth to sign him, ready to sell his soul to close the deal. But Khalil paused, dropping a heavy request for one final favor. Cut to our boy tossing a massive stack of grimoires straight into the arms of Mikhail, his newly hired muscle perfectly matching the mercenary's hidden wind affinity. Mikhail totally froze. He had never breathed a word about his element. Completely ignoring the stunned silence, Khalil pivoted straight to discussing the upcoming tournament. Mikhail snapped out of it, reporting the deadly clash at the Council of Immortals was exactly 7 days out. Being a total rookie in the arena, he was slotted into the beginner bracket where 3rd-tier magic would dominate. The catch, he had to completely master the banned spells before the clock ran out. Mikhail thought Khalil was totally losing his mind. Cramming months of brutal bone, crushing magical theory into a single week was absolute suicide. Khalil casually dismissed the panic, tagging Aiden in for assist duty. The guy was not exactly a legend, but he had his tactical uses. Our protagonist already knew this rogue was hard-capped at the 3rd magic tier, yet his raw blade work was genuinely terrifying. With enough grinding, Aiden could easily hit Grandmaster status. Khalil tasked the swordsman with drilling the fundamentals, leaving the heavy lifting to Mikhail. Mikhail pushed back, complaining that spamming Tier 1 moves was fine, but hitting Tier 2 instantly drained his tank due to his mutated triple-core system. Khalil ripped into for him, calling it a massive skill issue, and proving that bad stamina absolutely does not block someone from downloading higher-tier spells. Throwing the ball to Aiden, Khalil asked for a read. The swordsman immediately called it completely impossible, while secretly totally losing his mind over how this literal teenager knew his darkest secrets. Khalil casually dropped that he knew Aiden hailed from the eastern lands where the hidden kingdoms train warriors in extreme mana manipulation. Connecting the dots, Aiden backed off, admitting there was a microscopic chance they could pull off this miracle. Khalil stared him down, demanding to know if he had the guts to execute it. He brought up magical transformation, a completely busted skill that hyper-condenses elemental power to artificially force a class upgrade, a trick that usually demands decades of hellish grinding. Aiden's eyes widened, recognizing that legendary suicidal technique, but the professor seriously doubts this rookie merc has what it takes. Khalil could not care less, ordering him to drop the excuses and start the lesson right now. Hitting the dense woods for a crash course, the young gun is absolutely mind-blown by his own rapid progress. Honestly, even our MC is low-key shook. The kid is a straight-up prodigy, leaving Aiden picking his jaw off the dirt. Fast forward just 3 days and this absolute unit shatters the third-tier barrier. Khalil hypes up the so-called Great Professor Aiden for the epic assist. Since our boy is joining the tournament too, the rookie asks if he will be stuck in the noob bracket. Flexing his official papers, Khalil casually drops that he is already stacked in the expert division. Aiden feels his brain short-circuit. To pull that off, you need to be a solid Tier 4. The terrifying reality hits him. There is a slight chance. This kid is a legitimate swordmaster. A walking anomaly like him has not breathed on this continent in all of recorded history. Waving off their shock, Khalil tells them to chill. He has not even maxed out his internal cores yet. Dipping out of the clearing, he leaves the duo to their grind, claiming he has bigger fish to fry. Aiden is left sweating with a million unanswered questions. Every single thing about Khalil defies logic, while our MC is dead set on wringing every drop of latent power out of that rookie merc. Trekking deeper into the shadows of the woods, he finally finds a secluded spot. Using the pulsating aura of the dragon heart, he had effortlessly played Bargo like a fiddle. The catch, he has only forged 2 cores so far, and is stuck slinging entry-level spells. But to dominate the upcoming Master Tier brawl, he desperately needs to clear the expert qualifiers first. A flashback hits him, Mog dropping some heavy lore back in the day. The primordial beings who gifted humanity the spark of magic were dragons, though mingling with mortals was basically unheard of for them. These mythical beasts could not care less about continental politics. Human sorcery is basically a joke to them, yet the very ground Khalil stands on is practically radiating ancient draconic energy. Welcome to the crumbling ruins of Azor. According to Mog, even the giant reptiles wiped this ghost town from their memories. When Khalil previously asked if the legendary 7 elders were students of the dragons, Mog shot that theory down instantly. Instead, he dropped a bombshell. Those 7 elders were likely dragons in disguise. Fast forward to now, our boy can whip up basic flames, but old Asia's secret art hits completely different. Tier brackets dictate raw output, sparking a wild idea in his head. What happens if you cram Tier 5 destruction into a Tier 1 spell? Deciding to test run this insane theory, a wave of blinding agony instantly shreds through his veins. That suffocating familiar torment tries to swallow him whole, while the mysterious metal band on his wrist flares up like a supernova. Gritting his teeth, Khalil wrestles to keep the raging mana from blowing up in his face. It is a massive glitch every single time he channels his core magic. That cursed bracelet kicks in and instantly deletes the spell. It is a fatal flaw he has to hack as soon as possible. Risking it all, he shifts gears, violently clashing opposite elemental affinities to push his limits. Miraculously, the crazy gamble pays off, locking his unstable technique into place. Dual-wielding elements is literally impossible for anyone else alive on this continent. The only reason our overpowered MC can juggle the entire elemental spectrum is because he physically devoured a dragon heart. If the forbidden spells in that grimoire really belong to a wormim, he is the sole human breathing who can actually decode it. This realization just throws gasoline on his inner fire. He is obsessed with mastering that god-tier art, no matter the price. Meanwhile, deep in the blasted woods, a squad of sorcerers investigates a massive crater left by recent lightning strikes. Tensions instantly flare up among the nerds, as they violently clash over rating the sheer destructive tier of the residual mana. One guy shuts it down, barking that they have zero time for petty squabbles when duty calls. They have got a tight deadline to snitch to the higher-ups about whoever leveled half the local landscape. Wild rumors are already spreading about a catastrophic inferno and a relentless barrage of thunderbolts. The out-of-touch Mage Council quickly slapped a natural disaster label on the incident, totally clueless that our rogue MC is the actual walking nuke behind the chaos. Classic wizard behavior, sweeping anything they cannot comprehend right under the rug. and just blaming Mother Nature. Cut back to civilization, where Bargo tosses our boy his official guild badge, asking if he is hyped for the bloodbath. The boss man wants his brand front and center in the arena. Amused by the bald dude's shameless flex, Khalil smirks and agrees to sport the merch. Pivoting instantly, our MC demands to know the exact wager placed on his head, arguing that partners should not keep shady secrets. He presses the guild master to spit out the exact cash, dropping on his inevitable victory. A sly grin spreads across Bargo's face, realizing this kid's intuition is razor sharp. He confesses to dropping 100 gold coins on the match. Khalil instantly roasts him for such a pathetic stake, visibly bruising the bald guy's giant ego. Our boy does not flinch, demanding they crank the bet up to a staggering 500 gold pieces. Bargo starts sweating bullets at the ridiculous proposition, thinking this arrogant brat is completely underestimating the elite monsters lurking in the tournament brackets. To him, a cool 100 is the safest play, since it will not bankrupt the guild if things go south. Khalil just sighs, telling the old man he is fumbling a massive bag, which is frankly a tragic waste of a sure thing. Getting triggered by the teenager's massive ego, Bargo claps back, noting his insane overconfidence, and warns him he better secure that victory if he is going to talk that loud. But honestly, our MC does not plan on sticking around this backwater hub for long. He is hyper-fixated on his endgame, treating this hyped-up tournament like a minor speed bump. The clock is ticking before an all-out apocalyptic war drops on their heads, with Oliver tearing through the continent to crush the magical society under one banner. Having clawed his way back from hell itself, our survivor knows the grim truth. Tier 4 casters are utterly worthless in the grand scheme. To his godlike scaling, they are literally just bugs waiting to be squashed. Before the tension can escalate, a massive uproar echoes outside, pulling them to the window to check out the hype. The city square's giant screens are flashing, a brutal live-streamed duel. The main event has officially kicked off. Khalil leaned in and told the bald dude to drop his cash on a dark horse, promising him an absolute cinematic masterpiece. The wildcard in question, Mikhail, the ultimate merc. Our boy didn't waste a second, dragging them straight toward the Colosseum. Bargo wasn't exactly thrilled about throwing his bag at some random newbie, but Khalil's sheer unfiltered ego absolutely hooked him. Stepping into the pit, Khalil caught the merc squad chilling way too hard. Meanwhile, some washed-up spellcasters were whining that the tournament totally fell off. The whole stadium was crawling with absolute tryhards. Seeing these mages flex their fragile egos just fueled Khalil's urgency to track down his target as soon as possible. The expert tier bracket finally fired up. The massive gates swung open, and Khalil stepped right into the spotlight. Staring him down was some absolute NPC looking like a Hogwarts reject. Taking in the vibe, our kid instantly realized this entire setup was painfully mid. Basically an exact clone of the tower. Everyone out here cosplaying as high society, but deep down, this city's elites were perfectly identical. They treated the gladiators like cheap content and cash cows. Half the crowd was just there to network and pull shady strings behind the scenes. The whole bracket felt completely rigged from the jump, but Khalil walked in, ready to utterly crash their little party. This wand-waving wannabe genuinely thought he was about to catch an easy dub. Khalil actually had to laugh at the sheer audacity. The dude was glued to the floor, yet he started yapping a whole paragraph of incantations. Witnessing the most clownish duel strategy ever, our boy simply bolted straight at him. Closing the gap in a heartbeat, he made the NPC absolutely panic, before unleashing a relentless, brutal beatdown that shattered the guy's leg completely. Khalil sparked up a nasty fire hex to pack him up for good, but the pathetic dude instantly started crying and begging for his life. Instead of torching him, our savage MC scorched a target right onto the guy's receding hairline, dropping cold facts. Real enemies aren't gonna pause for a spoken word poetry session. Out in the active war zone, the bleachers completely lost their minds, crying about how this brutal reality check totally disrespected their sacred traditions. But in Khalil's eyes, combat magic is all about zero-waste efficiency, a hardcore philosophy drilled into his brain by none other than Sarika Lauren. That absolute unit of a woman firmly believed hiding backline mages was pure brain rot. She was dead set on completely rewriting the entire continent's combat meta. Khalil found her vision wildly captivating, mostly because she could effortlessly swing a heavy blade, while simultaneously dropping top-tier spells. When he casually asked what he should call her, she towered over him, displaying her insanely stacked proportions, and demanded to be called Supreme, a legendary status that was completely out of his league in his past life. But in this timeline, he's coming for that crown. Meanwhile, the bald boss was literally losing his mind over the arena victory. Hyping the kid up for putting on a masterclass, he lunged in for a bear hug and practically face-planted onto the dirt, dusting off his bruised ego. He practically begged our boy to tag along to the guild, promising to plug him in with some heavily influential VIPs. Khalil initially wanted to debrief his merc, but realizing Aiden had the situation on lock, he figured it was totally chill to shift focus and dig deeper into the Ulka's mystery. The second they stepped through the guild doors, every single pair of eyes locked onto our boy. Bargo instantly started barking at the lazy bums loitering around, telling them to grind and secure the bag. But the louder he barked, the more toxic the room's energy became. The massive wave of hate was purely because Khalil refused to play the role of a traditional squishy spellcaster. One hater mocked Bargo for glazing a kid over a single arena win. Then a totally wasted dude slurred out a dark warning telling Khalil to watch his back, because the greedy boss would milk him for profit and instantly throw him under the bus. Bargo snapped, telling Thompson to keep his mouth shut, threatening to repossess his magical staff and kick him to the curb if he didn't stop yapping. Totally plastered. Thompson just kept nagging our MC, lecturing him that staves aren't baseball bats meant for skull crushing. But our hyper-observant protagonist clocked some weird dark veins tracing up the guy's skin, instantly diagnosing the deadly underlying issue. Thompson deliberately shoulder-checked the kid, spitting that he'd never be a legitimate magic user, and acting like a bruiser guaranteed he'd always be a complete fraud. Bargo scoffed, roasting the drunk as a washed-up has-been who could barely stay on his feet, literally treating his mystical artifact like a cheap walking cane. Khalil's eyes narrowed with genuine curiosity. Bargo whispered that Thompson was actually Tier 5, hitting the absolute level cap for this entire faction. The boss had dumped massive capital into him only for the dude to spiral into a raging alcoholic. Waving off the tragic backstory, Bargo desperately tried to pivot back to making deals, but our stoic protagonist casually shut him down, pushing their corporate chat to a later date. Since the boss already knew his coordinates, Khalil threw out an offer to sync up later that evening. Left hanging, Bargo practically boiled over with pure rage. Meanwhile, Thompson stumbled down the stone alleyways, battling an apocalyptic hangover. Khalil effortlessly tracked him through the shadows, perfectly confirming his theory: the guy's veins were completely rotting from severe mana poisoning. The dude's brain was essentially a supercomputer for spells, but his fragile physical hardware couldn't handle the voltage, causing his own magic to literally devour him alive. Khalil remembered an old contact dropping this exact lore. Surviving it required insane physical conditioning. Thompson aggressively barked back that the kid was totally clueless, dismissing him as just an edgy zoomer. Unfazed Khalil served him the ice-cold reality. If he kept coping like this, he was going straight in the dirt. Frankly, it was a total miracle. His heart was still beating, and our boy confidently dropped the ultimate cheat code he could cure him. The drunk violently rejected the hope, but actions speak louder than yapping. Khalil sparked his aura, slammed his palm straight into the guy's chest, and instantly forced a massive surge of healing mana through his system. The treatment started out as absolute agony, but suddenly Thompson realized his cursed symptoms had straight up vanished. Khalil leaned in, asking how his body was holding up. Those nasty blemishes on his skin, completely gone. His energy was surging back, but he was left completely clueless about what kind of magic just went down. Khalil kept it real with him, warning that this was merely a temporary band-aid, but promised a permanent healing formula would be locked down shortly. Our boy swore he could deliver a full cure, but it came with a heavy price tag. He needed a massive favor. Fast forward to later that evening, he strolled back into the inn, spotting his crew already chilling and waiting for his arrival. The mercenary was absolutely hyped out of his mind, practically buzzing because he never expected to survive the tournament's brutal elimination brackets. He had witnessed our main character throwing down in the arena, and now he was dead set on reaching that exact same god-tier level of power. Khalil hyped him up, mentioning they might eventually clash in the elite division, but right now the merc needed to focus on absolutely destroying the noob lobbies. This dude is built entirely differently from textbook spellcasters because he has survived gritty, real-world battlefield warfare. Getting completely fired up, the mercenary swore absolute loyalty to his master, vowing to never take an L from those soft wizards who only know how to read from spellbooks. Khalil ordered him to grind his combat skills to absolute perfection, promising that down the line he would hook him up with a truly legendary trainer. Our protagonist is plotting a massive raid on Mog's lair, but let's be real, with his current stats stepping in, there would be an actual death wish. Until that top-tier master arrives, Mikhail has to keep grinding intensely. Meanwhile, our boy dropped a critical mission right into Aiden's lap. He warned that a specific target mage would be tracking him down at that exact location, and Aiden's only job was super straightforward: just secure the package being handed over. Aiden started sweating heavily, realizing that keeping his true identity under wraps was quickly turning into a massive headache. Plus, Khalil literally leaked a forbidden combat technique to the mercenary. If the wrong people found out, he would be facing an instant execution. Cut to midnight in the dead center of the plaza. Khalil was holding down the spot, waiting for his contact, but he was completely thrown off by who actually pulled up. Standing right there was Tapio, a high-ranking elder from the Dawn Council, and he was holding a super shady deal. The old man demanded our boy forfeit the tournament immediately, all because Khalil rolled with an underground guild entirely off the Magic Council's radar. Tapio assumed the kid was clueless about the massive stakes, but offered a fat payout to buy him off. Khalil called him out, roasting the council for being totally corrupt and knowing the whole bracket was rigged from the start. Still, that massive stack of hush money definitely caught his attention. The elder swore he would hand over the grand champion's loot anyway, tossing in a priceless magic tome to sweeten the pot. Honestly, Khalil knew that was an insanely good trade. But our main character has way bigger plans. He looked the elder dead in the eye and completely rejected the offer. Fast forward to the next morning. The arena crowd was absolutely shook by the finals announcement, mostly because every single other fighter had mysteriously wiped from the roster. One random wizard was stressing out, trying to process how the competition got cleared out overnight, while our boy internally noted he had to be extremely careful not to snap that ultra-rare magic staff. Flashback to last night, he had effortlessly folded that arrogant elder into the pavement. An announcer with insane curves and jaw-dropping visuals stepped up, calling the final two challengers to the main stage. Khalil casually told his opponent to have a good match. But let's keep it 100. This dude was walking into a total massacre. The ultimate showdown was locked, Khalil versus Zakin, the Dawn Council's golden boy. The crowd was highly confident their official elite wizard would easily crush this arrogant rookie. Khalil just smirked, knowing these spectators were incredibly lucky. His real stats were hidden. If these elitist mages figured out they were getting styled on by a literal barbarian, their fragile egos would instantly shatter into a million pieces. The second the bell rang, Zakin started spamming his high-level skills. Seeing his insane cast speed, Khalil had to admit the guy was actually cracked at magic. Back in the brutal days of the war, barely anyone could rapid-fire spells like that. If the nations had not teamed up back then, the human race would have been completely deleted. Our protagonist knew he had to limit his moveset to stay undercover, but basic starter skills would do the trick. Especially since Zakin was already sweating profusely and burning out his mana. Desperate Zakin managed to pop off a Tier 4 Blizzard attack. It is that classic toxic wizard mindset, thinking only flashy high-damage attacks actually matter in a real fight. Zakin thought this ultimate move was going to secure the victory, but our boy casually spawned a basic grease puddle right underneath the wizard's boots. Zakin completely wiped out, slamming face first onto the arena floor. The entire crowd was stunned, speechless, because that specific spell is strictly meant for sliding heavy furniture around. The spectators started whispering that the grand finals had turned into a total comedy sketch. But real veterans knew that back in the Oracle War, this exact dirty trick was pure meta. Because in actual lethal combat, comboing your skills is everything. Khalil instantly dropped a basic spark attack, igniting the oil and turning the ring into a raging inferno. The supposed elite wizard started screaming and panicking for his life. Khalil told him to chill out, pointing out he could easily blow the flames away with a simple gust spell. Any Tier 4 caster should be able to pull that off bare-handed. But Zakin was completely paralyzed by fear, basically forgetting how to play the game entirely. Sighing, Khalil manifested a massive barrier that vacuumed up all the raging fire, instantly erasing the deadly hazard from the stage like it was nothing. The VIP elders watching from the stands were absolutely flabbergasted, never expecting such a genius high IQ play to actually work in a real duel. Zakin just caught the most humiliating beatdown of his entire career, and his massive ego was completely shattered. Throwing a massive tantrum, he refused to take the L, screaming that Khalil's dirty fighting style was a massive insult to the sacred honor of true wizards. Khalil scoffed at his sheer audacity. Without a single word of magic, he started stepping menacingly toward him, slowly pulling a raw, heavy blade from its sheath. With a lightning-fast swing, he slammed the steel straight into the dirt, inches from Zakin's face. Staring menacingly into the trembling wizard's eyes, Khalil dropped the ultimate plot twist: he is not even a mage. Leaning in, he hit him with an absolutely chilling question, asking if that fake honor he won't shut up about is really worth more than keeping his head attached to his neck. Since the ultimate price tag in this brutal world is straight-up death, the judges officially crowned Khalil the undisputed champion. Bargo is absolutely losing his mind over this massive W, finally scoring a legitimate victory in the bloody tournament. He figures it is prime time to start pulling some strings, sliding a ridiculously shady contract across the table to our boy. We are talking a literal lifetime binding agreement, and backing out means an instant game over. Even the most unhinged mercenaries would not stoop that low. This entire setup reeks of the bald dude's bottomless toxic greed. Trying to gaslight the kid, he spins a total lie, promising that signing away 5 years of his life would score him absolute top-tier crafting loot. Khalil instantly sees right through the absolute cap, but plays along anyway, grabbing the pen. This makes the bald guy literally vibrate with hype, utterly convinced he just scammed a rookie. But our boy drops a totally unexpected twist, casually asking to toss in one little condition. Practically drooling, Bargo asks, "What is up?" Khalil demands a highly specific loophole. He only has to play by the rules, as long as the Ulka Guild is actually a functioning organization. A demand that sends the bald guy over the moon. He instantly signs off on the clause, completely delusional, thinking he just bought our hero's soul for pennies. But here is the brutal reality: that little footnote is absolute genius. Because the second Khalil secures the bag, that entire guild is getting wiped off the map, completely dismantled from the inside out. Even with the whole continent finally coming together, the dark shadow of the wooden cloud still heavily lingers. Blindsiding McGovern's kids took literally a matter of minutes. Masking themselves as a holy religion, this cult has been puppeteering the whole empire from the pitch-black shadows. They weaponized the monster outbreaks, using the total chaos to level up their influence. Khalil was out there scrapping against both mutated beasts and completely unhinged zealots. Countless victims fell for their brainwashing and threw their lives away. Suddenly, some random blonde dude barges into our protagonist's chill spot, demanding to know if the mage Khalil is around. Apparently, the absolute big boss of the city is requesting an audience, and these goons are his personal VIP escort service. Khalil just shrugs and rolls with it. It looks like Facio is finally stepping onto the chessboard. As the guy pulling all the strings in this fortress town, the mastermind finally comes face to face with our tournament champion. He drops a super charismatic greeting, and Khalil matches his energy right back. But thanks to his newly leveled up mana senses, his radar is screaming. Facio radiates such an intensely dark aura that it gives our boy literal goosebumps. Even though this corrupt lord is doomed to catch a heavy curse later for teaming up with straight-up villains and jumping innocent civilians, he correctly guesses that our boy is aiming straight for the master tier. Khalil hits him with a solid yes, totally blown away by this zero-fear attitude. Especially since that absolutely savage bracket barely has any surviving challengers left, it proves this old boomer is just as crazy as the rest of them. Facio figures the kid is thirsting over the ultimate grand prize, but he flat out warns him that trying to solo this raid is a guaranteed death sentence. To actually claim the legendary loot dropped by the 7 ancient elders, he has got to pass a hardcore vibe check. Khalil zeroes in asking exactly how he is supposed to flex his worth, knowing perfectly well not a single soul in that tier can even touch his stats. Catching his drift, Facio pitches a high-stakes side quest, basically a deadly parallel to the main event. This fortress city guards the absolute ancient legacy, and 3 overpowered grimoires were recently unearthed from the very crypt of magic's founding fathers. But recent scouting missions just pinged a completely untouched ruin. That intel actually catches our hero totally off guard. Facio wants him to drop in and scout the red zone, giving him absolute first dibs on any epic drops. Khalil instantly recognizes the coordinates. This is Grey Dean, the legendary headquarters where the ancient council used to hold their meetings. And in his past timeline, that spot was already totally looted. Scavengers had pulled some insanely busted relics left behind by the Supreme Elders. Specifically, a mythical blade that absolutely shreds without needing an ounce of dragon mana, the Freezing Claw. Everything instantly clicks. Now, he sees the old man's true endgame. Facio is using him as bait because he refuses to sacrifice his own elite squad in a blind dungeon. Plus, it is literally the most flawless choke point to jump somebody. But Khalil does the math and realizes this lethal setup actually hands him the ultimate advantage, so he instantly locks in and accepts the mission, fully aware he is the only player alive with the right specs to absorb the Elder's magic. He is about to straight up wipe this entire city's treasury clean. Aiden catches wind of the crazy update, while Khalil immediately checks in to see if his sidekick wrapped up that highly classified favor. But so far, absolute ghost town at the tavern. Completely burning with curiosity, Aiden begs for some context, but Khalil just hits him with the silent treatment. It is looking like Thompson is severely lagging on his main objective, failing to dig up the necessary dirt to cancel Bargo. But there is zero doubt he will deliver eventually. The dude's actual life is riding on it. Meanwhile, Mikhail desperately needs to shatter his limits and hit Tier 3. And Aiden is hyping him up, sensing the breakthrough is just around the corner. But Khalil drops a massive bomb, demanding the level up happens in exactly 48 hours. An ultimatum that absolutely paralyzes Aiden with panic, because that time limit is borderline psychotic. But our cold-blooded protagonist swears that if they actually pull off the impossible, he will hand Aiden his ultimate dream reward, a direct line of communication straight to Oliver. Our hero calculates that Azor is completely boxed in by a massive defensive force field, making long-distance telepathy insanely glitchy. That is the exact hidden reason Aiden got dragged all the way to this stronghold. Because the clock is ticking to leak vital intel back to the royal bloodline, we are inches away from a massive server-wiping event that will literally rewrite the history books. A full-blown bloody battle royale between the princes for the absolute crown. Cut to, right now Khalil has gone full stealth mode, infiltrating the ruins undetected. The heavy ancient scent hitting his lungs brings back some intense nostalgia. Back in the day, Mog was the one who lucked out and looted the Frost Claw right in this exact sector. Suddenly, a chilling, glitchy vibe crawls up Khalil's spine. It is the exact same terrifying aura that blasted the sky when the Death Tower spawned during the Oracle War. It feels like he just stepped straight back into that nightmare dungeon, though the gravity of the room is not entirely crushing him this time. Moving with absolute zero footstep precision, our boy bumps into a hidden magical firewall. Instant adrenaline spike. His hands clawed at the air, desperately gripping what felt like solid mass, but he forced his racing heart to slow down. It was just a twisted mind game. A split second later, a brutal impact sent him crashing into the cold dungeon stone. Sharp pain flared up through his body. The sheer speed of that ambush had caught him completely off guard. He scrambled to patch himself up. Sneaky toxins were already trying to burn through his veins, but he quickly locked down the infection before it could flatline him. Peering into the pitch-black abyss, a hulking silhouette finally took shape. This wasn't just some random mob. It was an unholy nightmare lurking in the shadows, totally abandoned by the light. Khalil's mind raced. What was this thing even doing down here? In his past life, these specific horrors only spawned way after the Oracle dropped her prophecy. This cursed dungeon was definitely hiding some wild secrets. Plus, compared to the absolute leviathans he'd clashed with back in the day, this beast was practically a runt. The fully grown ones towered dozens of meters high. Bracing himself for a brutal clash, Khalil quickly realized this younger variant traded pure size for insanely cracked speed. He barely deflected the opening barrage. Even as a juvenile, the beast was an absolute menace, its razor-sharp claws slicing just inches from his throat. Squaring up against a threat like this, with zero prep time, is practically a death wish. Still, Khalil pushed through the assault and carved a nasty gash into its flesh. Ideally, you'd want high-tier demonic magic and a stack of antidotes to counter this boss. Right now, our guy is rocking absolutely empty pockets. One wrong step, and he'd be totally dissolved in a literal tidal wave of toxic sludge. It was do or die, and losing simply wasn't on the menu. Despite leaking blood, the nightmare fueled its relentless assault. Khalil locked his eyes on the target. Blinking even for a microsecond could mean game over. Sure, its anatomy was purely cursed, but at the end of the day, it was still a biological entity. If it bleeds, he can absolutely slay it. Here is the catch. Shattering its core too early triggers a massive airborne toxic explosion. He had to time his lethal strike flawlessly. That was a brutal lesson he only figured out after watching thousands of his own soldiers get wiped out. Step 1 for survival, pop his blood magic for a defensive shield. But that cursed bracelet was severely nerfing his output. While Khalil cursed his rotten luck, the shadow beast launched itself forward in a blind, raging frenzy. Parrying those bone-crushing strikes took everything he had, proving this fight was going to be an absolute grind. Under the intense stress, the monster's glowing core began to aggressively bulge. That was his cue. Exactly on the third pulse, the core shifts its entire structure, dropping its defenses and turning practically paper-thin. Just as he plotted his counterattack, a wild twist derailed everything. An intensely mysterious aura suddenly flared up, totally wrapping his body in raw energy. It finally clicked, the seal broke. His dormant blood magic had fully awakened, but sensing the shift in power, the beast greedily lunged in for a cheap shot. While the monstrous freak barreled toward him for the kill, Khalil kept his cool and locked onto its chest. The core just pulsated for the second time. Only one more phase to go. He just had to hold the line and wait for the perfect opening.